Hello, friends. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your interaction not only supports the channel's growth, but also helps these stories reach more people. Thank you all for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. Erin Parker was adjusting her earpiece for her last shift before requesting a transfer when the fluorescent lights in the 911 call center flashed in a familiar tone. Despite having worked there for 7 years, she thought she had heard everything. She was wrong. 911, what's your emergency? Erin's practiced calm filled the line. Heavy breathing. Then a whisper so faint she had to strain to hear it. My daughter, she's gone. Ma'am, I need you to speak up. What's your name and location? Brittany Morgan, 4782 Willow Creek Drive. My daughter Emma, she's 7. I can't find her anywhere. Erin's fingers flew across the keyboard, dispatching units immediately. Officer Michael Turner and his partner, Officer Olivia Garcia, were closest, only 3 minutes out. Brittany, when did you last see Emma? 2 hours ago. She was playing in the backyard. I went inside for just 5 minutes to answer the phone, and when I came back, the woman's voice cracked. The gate was open. It's never open. Okay, Brittany, officers are on their way. Can you describe what Emma was wearing? Pink unicorn shirt, blue jeans, white sneakers with purple laces. She insisted on purple laces. Erin could hear the mother moving through the house, doors opening and closing. Brittany, I need you to stay calm. Have you checked with neighbors? Yes, all of them. Nobody's seen her, but wait. The line went quiet except for Brittany's rapid breathing. Brittany, what is it? There's a van outside. White van. It wasn't there before. Erin's pulse quickened. She immediately relayed this information to the responding units. Turner's voice crackled through the radio. Copy that. Dispatch. We're turning onto Willow Creek now. Brittany, do not approach the van. Stay inside and lock your doors. Officers are almost there. Someone's getting out, Brittany whispered. Oh my God, it's Mr. Henderson from down the street. He's carrying something. A small bundle wrapped in a blanket. The next 30 seconds felt like 30 minutes. Erin could hear Brittany's panicked breathing, the sound of a door being locked, and then Turner's voice on the radio. Dispatch, we have eyes on a white van, license plate. He's at my door, Brittany screamed. He's knocking. He knows I'm here. Brittany, officers are right there. Do not open the door. Through the phone, Erin heard pounding, then muffled voices. Then suddenly Garcia's voice, clear and authoritative. Sir, step back from the door. Police. The next few minutes were chaos. Erin could hear everything through Brittany's phone. Shouting, footsteps, a child crying. Wait, a child crying? Emma! Brittany's scream pierced through the headset. Turner's voice came through the radio, professional but with an edge of confusion. Dispatch. Situation is complex. The child is safe. Repeat, child is safe. But we need additional units and maybe CPS. Over the next hour, the full story emerged through various phone calls and radio transmissions. Mr. Henderson had found Emma wandering near the highway, nearly 2 miles from home. He'd wrapped her in a blanket because she was shivering and driven her back. But here's where it got strange. Emma insisted she hadn't wandered off. She said the other mommy had taken her for ice cream. When Erin listened to the interview recordings later, Emma's description chilled her to the bone. The other mommy looked exactly like Brittany. Same hair, same clothes, even the same voice. But she drove a different car and lived in a backwards house where everything was opposite. The investigation revealed something even more disturbing. Security footage from a gas station a mile away showed Emma walking hand in hand with a woman at 3:47 p.m. The woman's face was never clearly visible, but her build, her gait, even her clothing matched Brittany Morgan's exactly. But Brittany had been on a recorded work call at that exact time, with 3 colleagues confirming her presence on video. 2 weeks later, Erin received one more call that made her decision to transfer Pinole. It was 2:34 a.m. when the line rang. 911, what's your emergency? This is Emma Morgan. The other mommy says she's coming back for me tomorrow. The voice was young, scared. Erin checked the number. It was coming from the Morgan house. Emma, honey, where are your parents? They're sleeping. The other mommy told me to call you. She says you need to know she's not done. Emma, can you wake up your mom for me? She says not to. She says you'll understand soon. She says to check your records for May 15th, 1987. The line went dead. When Erin pulled the records from May 15th, 1987, she found a 911 transcript that made her blood run cold. A 7-year-old girl named Brittany Hayes had called to report that the other mommy had tried to take her. The address? 4782 Willow Creek Drive, the same house. Brittany Hayes had married and become Brittany Morgan. The pattern was repeating. The next morning, Erin submitted her transfer request. Some calls, she realized, never really end. They just wait for the next generation to pick up the phone. Officer Turner's report noted one final detail that was never explained. When they'd found Emma with Mr. Henderson, she was holding a photograph. It showed 2 women standing side by side, identical in every way. One was clearly Brittany Morgan. The other was smiling, but her eyes were completely black. Emma couldn't explain where the photo came from, and it wasn't in evidence by the time the detective arrived. It had simply vanished, like it had never existed at all. 3 months after the Emma Morgan case, dispatcher Jordan Mitchell was working the graveyard shift when he received a call that would haunt him for the rest of his career. It started simple enough. Most of the worst ones did. 911, what's your emergency? My name is Caleb Foster. The voice was calm, too calm. I need you to send officers to 892 Maple Avenue, apartment 3B, in exactly 1 hour. Jordan sat up straighter. Sir, what's happening at that location? I'll be dead. Sir, are you having thoughts of self-harm? I can send help right now. No. The voice remained eerily steady. You don't understand. I'm not going to kill myself. Someone else is going to kill me in exactly 58 minutes now. Jordan's training kicked in. He immediately flagged the call for priority response while keeping Caleb on the line. Caleb, if you're in danger, we need to send officers now. Who's threatening you? I don't know who they are. I only know what they told me. They said I had to follow the rules or my sister dies. The first rule was to call you at exactly 11:17 p.m. The second rule was to tell you not to send anyone for 1 hour. Officer Brandon Lewis and his partner Officer Daniela Alvarez were already being dispatched, despite the caller's request. Jordan kept his voice level. Caleb, where is your sister now? I don't know. They took her 3 hours ago. They left me a phone and a list of rules. I have to follow them exactly. Can you read me the rules? There was a rustling of paper. Rule 1. Call 911 at 11:17 p.m. Rule 2. Tell them to wait 1 hour. Rule 3. At 11:32 p.m. go to the bathroom medicine cabinet. Rule 4. At 11:45 p.m. answer the door. Rule 5. At 12:17 a.m. it ends. Jordan checked the clock. 11:19 p.m. Caleb, officers are on their way to help you. No. For the first time, panic crept into Caleb's voice. They can see me. They told me they can see me. If police come early, Sarah dies. Please, you have to wait. How do they see you, Caleb? I don't know. Cameras, maybe? They knew things. They knew what I ate for breakfast, what show I was watching. They described my apartment perfectly, even though I've only lived here 2 weeks. Lewis's voice came through the radio. Dispatch, we're 5 minutes out from Maple Avenue. Jordan muted his radio mic and continued with Caleb. Tell me about your sister. How old is Sarah? She's 19. She's a sophomore at State. She was supposed to come over for dinner, but when she got here, there were 3 people waiting. They had masks, medical masks like surgeons wear. They took her and left me the phone and the rules. Can you describe these people? Average height, all wearing black, but one of them. One had a tattoo on their wrist, a number, 0517. Jordan documented everything while keeping one eye on the clock. 11:24 p.m. Caleb, I need you to know that we're going to do everything we can to help you and find Sarah. Can you tell me if your door's locked? Yes, they told me to lock it and not open it until 11:45. What happens at 11:45? Rule 4. Answer the door. Lewis radioed in. Dispatch, we're at the building. Holding position as discussed. Jordan had made the controversial decision to have officers staged nearby, but not approach until the timeline played out. Every instinct screamed at him to send them in now, but something about this case felt different. The caller's certainty, the specific timeline, the threat to the sister, it all pointed to something more complex than a simple crisis call. 11:32 p.m. arrived. Caleb, it's time for Rule 3. I'm staying on the line with you. Jordan heard footsteps, a door opening, the sound of items being moved. Then Caleb gasped. What is it? Jordan asked. There's a photo, taped inside the medicine cabinet. It's Sarah. She's tied up, but she looks okay. There's today's newspaper next to her. And there's something written on the back of the photo. What does it say? She lives if you follow the rules. Check the toilet tank. More sounds of movement, the porcelain scrape of a toilet lid being removed. There's a plastic bag. Caleb's voice shook. There's something in it. Oh, God. What is it, Caleb? It's a knife. And another note. It says, for 11:45, don't clean it. Jordan's blood ran cold. He unmuted his radio. All units, possible setup in progress. Suspect may be attempting to frame the caller. Do not approach until my signal. 11:45 p.m. Someone's knocking, Caleb whispered. 3 knocks, just like they said. Caleb, do not answer that door. Officers are right outside. I have to, for Sarah. Jordan heard footsteps, the sound of locks turning, a door opening. Hello, Caleb. The new voice was distorted, like it was coming through a voice changer. Did you get our present? Where's Sarah? Caleb demanded. Safe. For now. Did you touch the knife? What? No, Pick it up. I'm not. Pick it up or Sarah dies. You have 10 seconds. Jordan made a decision. All units, move in now. Apartment 3B, exclamation mark. Through the phone, he heard Caleb shout, No! Then running footsteps, the knife clattering on the floor, doors slamming. Lewis's voice on radio. We're in. Apartment is dispatch. The apartment is empty. Just the caller. No one else. Check the hallways, the stairs, everything, Jordan ordered. 11:52 p.m. Through Caleb's phone, Jordan could hear him talking rapidly to the officers, explaining about Sarah, the rules, the knife. Then Caleb's phone rang. Not the 911 line, but another phone. "Speaker," Jordan heard Lewis order. "Put it on speaker." The distorted voice returned. "You broke the rules. But we're merciful. Sarah is in the trunk of the blue Honda Civic in the parking garage. Space 47. You have 5 minutes before the air runs out." The line went dead. "Go, go, go!" Lewis shouted. Jordan could hear running, radio chatter, then finally, after the longest 3 minutes of his life, "We got her. She's alive. We need medical." The relief was short-lived. As the scene was processed, disturbing details emerged. The knife in the toilet tank was covered in blood. Blood that would later match a murder victim found 2 days earlier across town. Caleb's fingerprints were now on it. The photo of Sarah was real, but metadata showed it was taken 3 weeks ago, not that night. Sarah, when she fully regained consciousness, had no memory of the last 6 hours. Security footage from the building showed Caleb entering alone at 10 p.m. No one else was seen entering or leaving. The apartment next door had been vacant for months, but when police checked it the next day, they found a complex setup of cameras all aimed through tiny holes into Caleb's apartment. The equipment was professional grade, military spec. All serial numbers had been removed. The investigation revealed that Caleb had been chosen specifically. 3 months earlier, he had been a juror on a trial where the defendant was convicted of murder. The defendant had screamed at the jury that they'd all pay. The defendant had killed himself in prison 2 weeks ago. The number on the kidnapper's wrist, 0517, was the defendant's birthday. But here's what kept Jordan up at night. The defendant had been in solitary confinement when he died. No visitors, no phone calls, no contact with the outside world. So, who organized this elaborate revenge? The blood on the knife cleared Caleb of the earlier murder, but the psychological damage was done. He and Sarah left the state within a month. Jordan heard they changed their names. As for the voice on the phone, audio analysis revealed it was completely artificial. Not a person using a voice changer, but a computer-generated voice programmed to respond to specific keywords. The entire conversation had been scripted by someone who understood exactly how 911 calls worked, how police would respond, how to manipulate the system. Jordan never forgot 12:17 a.m., the time it ends according to the rules. He looked it up later. In military time, 0017 on May 17th was when the defendant had been pronounced dead in prison. Someone had been planning this for a very long time. Dispatcher Kayla Rivera had been off duty when the call came in, but she heard about it the next morning when she arrived for her shift. Her colleague had handled it, but something about the details made her pull the recording. What she heard changed everything she thought she knew about a case from 2 years ago. The call had come in at 3:33 a.m. 911, what's your emergency? Hello. The voice was young, female, terrified. My name is Priya Singh. I'm at, I don't know where I am, but I can hear them searching for me. Priya, are you in immediate danger? Yes, there are at least 3 of them. Maybe more. I escaped from a basement, but I don't know this house. I'm hiding in what looks like an attic. Can you see any windows? Any landmarks? There's a window, but it's painted black. Wait, there's a tiny scratch in the paint. I can see a water tower. It says Millbrook on it. The dispatcher had immediately notified units. Millbrook was a small district on the east side of the city. Only about 20 blocks to search. Priya, how did you get to this location? They took me from the parking lot at my job. Cinema 12 at the mall, that was... God, what day is it? It's Thursday, March 15th. Thursday. They took me Monday night. I've been in that basement for 3 days. Kayla paused the recording. She knew that name. Priya Singh. She'd been reported missing Monday night, just as the caller said. But Priya Singh's body had been found Tuesday morning in the river, 30 miles from Millbrook. The coroner had confirmed the identification through dental records. She continued the recording. "Priya, can you describe the people who took you?" "2 men and a woman. The woman is in charge. She has red hair, very long. She calls the men Tom and Eddie, but I don't think those are real names." "Can you—" The dispatcher paused. "Priya, I'm showing you were found. Please, don't stop helping me." The girl's voice cracked with panic. "I know something's wrong with the system. They told me. They said they put something in the system to make it look like I'm dead. They said no one would look for me because of it. Please, please believe me." Units had been dispatched despite the confusion. 5 cars were searching Millbrook, looking for any house with a view of the water tower. But then the call had taken a turn. "I can hear her," Priya whispered. "The woman. She's calling my name. She knows I'm not in the basement. Stay quiet." "Officers are searching the area," she's saying. "Oh God," she's saying, "Priya, we know you're on the phone. If you don't come down, we'll have to visit your little sister at Roosevelt Elementary. She gets out at 3:15, doesn't she?" The dispatcher's voice remained steady. "Priya, don't listen to them. Your sister is safe." "How do you know?" "They knew about my job, my schedule, everything. They've been watching me for months. They showed me pictures of my family, my friends, taken from far away." Officer Michael Turner's voice came through the radio. "Dispatch, we've located 3 possible houses with water tower views. Requesting permission to—" A crash came through the phone line. Priya screamed. "They found me! They're breaking through the—" The sound that came next was unusual. Not a disconnection, but a strange electronic whine, like feedback. Then a different voice, calm and measured. "Dispatcher, this is Dr. Elizabeth Crenshaw with the Millbrook Psychiatric Research Facility. I apologize for the confusion. One of our patients accessed an outside line. She's safe now. This is a 911 emergency line. I need to verify. The patient's name is Rebecca Morse. She's been with us for 6 months. She has severe dissociative identity disorder and sometimes believes she's people she's seen on the news. I'm afraid she saw the report about that poor Singh girl." The dispatcher had followed protocol, sending units to verify. They found the Millbrook Psychiatric Research Facility right where the doctor said it would be. They confirmed a patient named Rebecca Morse, who did indeed look nothing like Priya Singh. The case was closed, but Kayla couldn't let it go. She started digging into the Millbrook Psychiatric Research Facility. It was real, licensed, with all the proper paperwork. But it had only been in operation for 8 months. The timing bothered her. She pulled more records. In the 2 years since that call, there had been 4 other similar incidents. Missing persons who called 911 after they'd supposedly been found dead. Each time, the calls traced back to psychiatric facilities or hospitals. Each time, there was a reasonable explanation. But when Kayla mapped the locations, a pattern emerged. All 5 facilities were owned by shell companies that traced back to a single corporation, Cerberus Medical Holdings. The corporation was legitimate, but its board of directors was a maze of other shell companies and foreign investors. She dug deeper. The 5 missing persons who'd called after being found dead had things in common. They were all young women between 18 and 25. All had been reported missing from public places with security cameras. All had been found dead within 48 hours. Always in water, always in locations that would destroy most physical evidence. Then, Kayla found something that made her hands shake. Priya Singh's dental records, the ones used to identify her body, had been updated just 2 weeks before her disappearance. The update was made by a Dr. Helen Morrison, who worked at a dental clinic owned by Cerberus Medical Holdings. She brought her findings to her supervisor, then to the police, then to the FBI. Each time, she was told the same thing: coincidences. The cases were closed. The bodies were identified properly. The facilities were legitimate. But Kayla knew what she'd heard on that recording. The fear in Priya's voice was real. The details she'd given, the water tower, the basement, the 3 kidnappers, were too specific to be delusions. 3 weeks after she started investigating, Kayla got a call at home. Her personal phone, unlisted number. "Miss Rivera." The voice was distorted, electronic. "You've been very thorough. We're impressed." "Who is this?" "We're the people who give second chances. The people who help certain individuals disappear when they need to. The families are compensated. Everyone wins. You're kidnappers, murderers. We're facilitators." "The women you're concerned about?" "They're alive, Miss Rivera. They're living new lives far from whatever they were running from. The bodies? Unfortunate volunteers who were already dead. We simply gave them new identities." "I don't believe you." "Check your email." Against her better judgment, Kayla did. There was a video file. She opened it. It showed Priya Singh, alive, sitting in what looked like a nice apartment reading a book. The timestamp was from 3 days ago. The video panned to show a window. Outside was a skyline Kayla didn't recognize. Somewhere foreign. "She was running from an arranged marriage," the voice continued. "Her family would have killed her for refusing. We gave her a way out." The others had similar stories: abuse, stalkers, dangerous families. "This is insane. You can't just..." "We can, and we do. But now you know too much, Miss Rivera. So we're offering you a choice. Stop investigating, destroy what you found, and go on with your life. Or keep digging, and we'll have to make you disappear too. Not like them. You haven't paid for the service. Your disappearance would be less comfortable." The line went dead. Kayla stared at the video of Priya, alive and seemingly well. She thought about the fear in her voice during that 911 call. Even if this organization claimed to be helping, they were terrorizing these women first. The basement, the threats to family. It was psychological torture. She made her choice. Kayla compiled everything she'd found into an encrypted file and sent it to every news outlet she could think of. Then she called 911 herself. "911, what's your emergency?" "This is dispatcher Kayla Rivera, badge number 4471. I need to report a conspiracy involving multiple kidnappings and false death reports. I have evidence of..." The line went dead. Not disconnected. Dead. Her cell phone showed no signal. She tried her laptop. No internet connection. A text message somehow came through on her dead phone. Wrong choice. Kayla grabbed her go-bag and ran for her car. She'd prepared for this possibility. She had cash, a new ID she'd obtained months ago, and a full tank of gas. She made it 12 blocks before the police pulled her over. The officer who approached her window was someone she knew, Officer Brandon Lewis. "Kayla, we got a call that your car was stolen." "Brandon, listen to me. I didn't report my car stolen. Something big is happening. I need..." Her phone buzzed. A new message, just 2 words. "Sister." School. Kayla's sister taught at Roosevelt Elementary, the same school Priya's sister attended. Kayla stopped. "I'm sorry, Brandon. I think I'm having a panic attack. I've been under a lot of stress. Can you follow me home?" Brandon looked concerned but nodded. "Of course." Kayla drove home slowly, Brandon's cruiser behind her. She went inside, destroyed her hard drives with the hammer she kept for this purpose, and burned all her printed research in her fireplace. The next day, she submitted her resignation from the dispatch center citing stress and burnout. A week later, she received a package with no return address. Inside was a photo of her sister, teaching her class, taken from outside the classroom window. On the back was written, "Good choice. We'll be watching." Kayla left the state within a month. She never worked in emergency services again. Sometimes she wondered if she should have fought harder, dug deeper. But then she'd think about that photo of her sister and know she'd made the only choice she could. The truth was out there, scattered across her encrypted files in various news outlets' servers. Maybe someday someone else would piece it together. Someone who had less to lose. But one thing haunted her. If the organization was telling the truth about helping these women escape, why did Priya sound so terrified? Why the basement, the threats, the hunting? The answer came to her months later, in a dream that woke her gasping. They weren't just helping them disappear, they were breaking them first. Breaking them so completely that they'd never try to return to their old lives, never try to contact their families. The fear, the torture, it was all part of the service, a complete psychological reset. And somewhere out there, Priya Singh and 4 other women were living new lives, too traumatized to ever speak about what really happened to them. The perfect victims because officially they were already dead. 6 months after Kayla Rivera's resignation, a new dispatcher named Jordan Mitchell returned from leave to find the entire 911 center in upheaval. 3 dispatchers had quit in the past week, and nobody would tell him why. His first shift back was supposed to be easy, a Tuesday afternoon, typically their quietest time. But at 2:15 p.m. a call came in that would connect everything. 911. What's your emergency? Listen carefully because I'm only going to say this once. The voice was male, older, tired. My name is Dr. Marcus Webb, and I used to work for Cerberus Medical Holdings. I'm at 445 Industrial Boulevard, Building C, 3rd floor. In approximately 10 minutes, they're going to kill me. But before they do, I need someone to know the truth about the 911 calls. Jordan's blood ran cold. He'd heard whispers about Cerberus, about Kayla's investigation. Sir, if you're in danger, I'm dispatching units now. No, let me finish. I designed the system, the whole thing. The fake deaths, the psychiatric facilities, the new identities. It started as a legitimate witness protection alternative. People paid us to disappear them safely, but it became something else. Dr. Webb, officers are on their way. The women who call 911 after they're dead, it's not part of the service, it's a glitch. A humanitarian glitch I built into the system. When their stress levels peak during the breakdown process, they're given access to a phone. It's supposed to be disabled, but I made sure it could still call 911. It was my insurance policy, my way of leaving breadcrumbs. Jordan was frantically typing, documenting everything while dispatching units silently. But they found out about the glitch last week. They know it was me. They also know about the other glitch, the one that's going to activate in 8 minutes. What glitch? Every fake death certificate, every falsified dental record, every staged crime scene photo, I embedded them with metadata that tells the real story. In 8 minutes, that data releases to every major news outlet and law enforcement database simultaneously. 5 years of evidence. Officer Michael Turner's voice crackled through the radio. Dispatch, we're 3 minutes from Industrial Boulevard. Dr. Webb, help is almost there. There's something else. The missing women aren't the only ones. There are men, too. Children, entire families. 312 people in the last 5 years. Not all of them wanted to disappear. Some were sold. Some were taken for research. Building C has the servers with everything. A door slammed in the background. Voices shouting. They're here, Webb said calmly. Remember, Building C, 3rd floor, server room behind the false wall. The password is Lazarus Rising. Dr. Webb. A gunshot, then nothing. Turner's voice. Shots fired at the location. We're going in. What happened next was chaos. Officers arrived to find Dr. Marcus Webb dead in an office that was being rapidly cleaned by a professional crew. The crew had paperwork showing they were scheduled for renovation work. They had no idea about any shooting, but Turner, remembering the call details, found the server room. The false wall was exactly where Webb had said. Inside were banks of servers, all actively deleting data. The tech team managed to save partial files, but most was lost. What they recovered was enough to blow everything open. Patient files for people who were supposed to be dead. Financial records showing payments from families, some willing, some clearly coerced. Medical experiment data using volunteers who couldn't complain because they didn't officially exist. And then there were the recordings. Hundreds of hours of 911 calls that had been intercepted and rerouted. Not just the 5 women Kayla had found, but dozens more. All begging for help, all disappeared into the system. The FBI raid on Cerberus Medical Holdings happened that night. They found empty buildings, cleaned out offices, and no employees. Everyone had vanished, including the entire board of directors. But the investigation uncovered something else in those partial server files, a list of assets in place. These were people Cerberus had positioned in various organizations: police departments, hospitals, government agencies, and 9/11 dispatch centers. 3 names from Jordan's own center were on that list. That's why dispatchers had been quitting. They'd seen their own names and run. The investigation revealed the full scope of the operation. When someone called 911 for help, dispatchers on Cerberus's payroll would flag certain calls. Vulnerable people, people without strong family connections, people who wouldn't be missed immediately. Their locations would be forwarded to extraction teams. Some were offered the service, pay to disappear. Others were simply taken. The most chilling discovery was in Webb's personal files, recovered from a hidden partition on the servers. He'd documented everything, including his growing horror at what the organization had become. His final entry, dated the day before his death, read, "The pattern must be broken. They've turned a lifeline into a trap. Every 911 call is potentially a shopping list for them now. I've programmed the kill switch. If you're reading this, it means I activated it. The evidence is fragmenting and spreading across the internet like a virus. They can't stop it all. Someone will piece it together. The pattern will be broken." The FBI found 17 facilities across the country, all empty but showing signs of recent habitation. Medical equipment, holding cells disguised as patient rooms, and in one location, a room full of recordings. Practice sessions where people were taught to respond to their new names, their new histories. But they never found the people. 312 missing individuals, and not one was recovered. Jordan kept working at the dispatch center, but everything had changed. Every call could be genuine, or it could be someone trying to escape from Cerberus's remnants. They'd implemented new protocols, verification systems, but the doubt lingered. 6 months later, Jordan received a call that proved the organization was still active. 911, what's your emergency? My name is Sarah Foster. You helped save my brother Caleb 6 months ago. The people who took me that night, they're back. They want me to deliver a message. Jordan's blood froze. He remembered the Foster case, the elaborate setup with the knife and the rules. Sarah, where are you? They want you to know that Dr. Webb was wrong. The pattern isn't broken, it's evolved. Check the news tomorrow. Industrial Boulevard, Building C, you'll understand. The line went dead. The next day, Building C burned to the ground. Fire investigators found traces of accelerant, but no cause. The servers Jordan had helped save were destroyed in evidence lockup the same night. A perfectly timed power surge that fried everything. But the most disturbing part was what firefighters found in the basement of Building C. A room that hadn't been there during the FBI raid. Inside were 312 empty folders, each labeled with a name. The names of all the missing people. Each folder contained a single sheet of paper with the same message. They chose their new lives. Stop looking. Jordan knew it was a lie. Some might have chosen to disappear, but not all. Not the ones who called 911 begging for help. Not the ones screaming in the backgrounds of those calls. He made a decision. He started his own investigation, careful and quiet. He reached out to Kayla Rivera through encrypted channels. She responded with 2 words. Not safe. But she also sent him something. A pattern she'd noticed in the calls before she'd quit. Every genuine Cerberus victim had mentioned seeing something specific during their captivity. A medical caduceus symbol, but wrong. Instead of 2 snakes around a staff, it was 2 phone cords around a cell tower. The last call Jordan took before he too resigned came at exactly 9:11 p.m. on a Thursday night. 911, what's your emergency? This isn't an emergency, Jordan. This is a job offer. The voice was electronically distorted, but somehow familiar. We know you've been looking for us. We admire dedication. Dr. Webb spoke highly of you before his unfortunate decision. Webb never knew me. He knew of you. He flagged you as incorruptible. A pattern breaker like himself. We could use someone like you. To kidnap people, to fake their deaths, to save them. Every person we've taken was either running from something worse or heading towards something worse. We intervene, we give second chances. That's not your choice to make, isn't it? How many 911 calls have you taken where you arrived too late? Domestic violence that escalated to murder, stalking that ended in tragedy. We prevent those endings by traumatizing people, by breaking them psychologically, by showing them their old life is truly over. It's mercy, Jordan, cruel mercy, but mercy nonetheless. I'm tracing this call. No, you're not. This call doesn't exist in your system. Check your screen. Jordan looked. His screen showed no active call, but the voice continued in his headset. We're offering you a chance to be part of the solution instead of the cleanup crew. Think about it. You have 48 hours. If you're interested, call 911 from your personal phone and say you want to report a pattern 7. We'll find you. The line went dead. Jordan sat there for a long moment, then did something that would have gotten him fired if anyone had been watching. He deleted the last 30 minutes of his shift from the recording system, using an administrator override he wasn't supposed to have. He never made the call. Instead, he disappeared the old-fashioned way, packed up his life and left town without a word. But before he left, he did one thing. He uploaded everything he'd found to a dozen different servers, all set to release if he didn't check in every month. His insurance policy. Somewhere out there, Cerberus Medical Holdings was still operating, still taking people, still monitoring 911 calls for potential targets. But now, they knew they were being watched too. The pattern breakers were out there, documenting, recording, waiting for them to make a mistake. The game had changed. Every 911 call was now a potential battleground between those trying to save lives and those trying to steal them. And in dispatch centers across the country, operators answered calls with a new kind of vigilance, knowing that the voice on the other end might be crying for help, not just from immediate danger, but from an organization that could make them disappear so completely that even their death would be a lie. The pattern wasn't broken, but neither was the will of those fighting against it. 3 years later, a congressional investigation was launched into widespread irregularities in 911 emergency response systems nationwide. The investigation was triggered by an anonymous data dump containing thousands of hours of suppressed 911 recordings. The recordings revealed a systematic infiltration of emergency services by an organization that still has no official name. Cerberus Medical Holdings was just one arm of something much larger. During the hearings, a surprise witness appeared. Their face was obscured, their voice distorted, but they claimed to be one of the 312 missing people. "We're not dead," they testified. "We're not living new lives by choice. We're assets. We're being used for things you wouldn't believe. Medical testing, psychological experiments. Some are forced into service for the organization itself. The 911 calls weren't glitches. They were our only chances to cry for help." When asked where the others were being held, the witness said something that chilled everyone watching. "Everywhere and nowhere. We're in facilities that don't exist, in international waters, in countries with no extradition. But the worst part? Some of us are hiding in plain sight, given new identities, forced to work normal jobs while being monitored 24/7. Your neighbor, your co-worker, the person serving your coffee, any of them could be one of us, desperate to escape, but knowing that one wrong move means death or worse." The witness was escorted to safety after their testimony, but they vanished from protective custody within 48 hours. No trace was ever found. The investigation continues, but every lead seems to evaporate. Facilities are found empty, witnesses disappear or recant. Digital evidence corrupts itself. And in 911 dispatch centers around the world, operators still receive calls from people who shouldn't exist, begging for help from places that can't be found, describing captors who leave no trace. The pattern remains unbroken, but so does the search for truth. Every call matters, every voice deserves to be heard, even the ones that aren't supposed to exist. The night shift at the Crawford County 911 Dispatch Center was mostly quiet. Rural areas of Kentucky didn't receive as many calls as city centers, which is why dispatcher Rachel Martinez preferred to stay here. After working in Louisville for 10 years, she had moved here to relax. She was about to learn that peace could be more frightening than chaos. It was 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday when the call came in. 911, what's your emergency? Static. Then, barely audible, a whisper. Please, the road. Rachel adjusted her headset, cranking up the volume. Sir or ma'am, I need you to speak up. Where are you? Mile marker, 43, Old Hollow Road. The voice was so faint she could barely determine if it was male or female. Car? Upside down? Rachel's training kicked in immediately. Old Hollow Road was a notorious stretch of winding pavement that cut through the mountains, 20 miles from the nearest town. Single-car accidents were common there, especially in the dark. The locals had theories about why. Some blamed the sharp curves and lack of streetlights. Others whispered about older, darker reasons. Rachel had dismissed such talk as rural superstition when she'd first arrived. That was before she'd taken her first night shift call from that particular stretch of asphalt. I'm dispatching emergency services now. Are you injured? Can't feel my legs, but that's not why I'm calling. Deputy Aaron Hayes was the closest unit, patrolling about 8 minutes from that location. Rachel flagged him immediately while keeping the caller on the line. Hayes was a veteran of these roads, 15 years on the force, and even he avoided Old Hollow Road when he could. there was something about the way headlights seemed to dim there. How radio signals would cut in and out without explanation. "Sir, help is on the way. What's your name?" "Nathan Cross. But listen, there's something else here." "What do you mean, Nathan?" "I can hear them. Whispers. They're getting closer." Rachel's first thought was head trauma. Auditory hallucinations weren't uncommon after a serious accident. She'd been trained to keep victims talking, to monitor their coherence. "Nathan, you may have a head injury. Try to stay still and stay with me." No, you don't understand. They were here before I crashed. That's why I crashed." I swerved to avoid, "Oh God, they're coming closer." Through the static, Rachel could hear something else. It did sound like whispering, but it could have been wind through broken glass, or the sound of escaping air from damaged tires. She'd been doing this job long enough to know that trauma could make people perceive ordinary sounds as threatening. Yet something about the rhythm of those whispers made her skin crawl. "Nathan, I need you to focus on my voice. Deputy Hayes is 5 minutes out." The whispers, they're saying names. Jennifer Walsh, David Kim, Rosa Hernandez, they're saying they're still here, still on this road. Rachel's blood chilled. Those were names she recognized. 3 people who had died in separate accidents on Old Hollow Road over the past 2 years. She'd taken David Kim's call herself, a hit and run that had never been solved. The investigation had been strange from the start. No paint transfer on Kim's vehicle, no tire tracks from another car, nothing to suggest another vehicle had been involved despite Kim's insistence that something had forced him off the road. "Nathan, you're going to be okay. Just stay calm." They're at the window now. Jesus Christ, their faces, they don't have eyes, just black hole, and their mouths won't stop moving. Hayes's voice crackled through the radio. "Dispatch, I'm at mile marker 43. I don't see any vehicle." Rachel's stomach dropped. She double-checked her GPS tracking of Nathan's cell phone. It showed him exactly where he claimed to be. "Check again, Aaron. Caller says he's in an overturned vehicle." "Rachel, I'm standing at the marker. There's nothing here. No skid marks, no debris, nothing." "He has to be there. Nathan, can you see any landmarks? Anything specific?" "The old pine, the one that split down the middle from lightning. I'm right next to it." Hayes' voice came back immediately. "That's where I am." "The split pine. Rachel, there's no one here." Rachel felt her mouth go dry. She'd heard stories from other dispatchers, urban legends about calls from nowhere, but she'd never experienced one herself. "Nathan, I need you to make some noise. Honk your horn if you can." "I can't move. But wait, I can see headlights. Someone's coming. Thank God, someone's—" "No! No! Don't get out of the car. Don't listen to them." The line exploded with static, and then Rachel heard something that would haunt her for years. Multiple voices, all whispering in unison, but she could make out the words clearly. "Join us on the road." The road needs witnesses. The road needs rememberers. Then nothing. The call disconnected. Hayes spent 3 hours searching every inch of that stretch of road. He found nothing. No Nathan Cross in any database. No reported accidents. No cell tower pings to indicate where the call had originated from. The number that had called traced back to a phone that had been destroyed in a fire 3 years ago. Its owner long dead. Rachel might have written it off as a prank, except for what happened 3 nights later. Another call, 2:51 a.m. "911, what's your emergency?" "My name is Grace Thompson. I'm at mile marker 44 on Old Hollow Road. I've been in an accident." Rachel's hands trembled as she typed. She recognized the voice pattern now, and that hollow quality, like someone speaking from the bottom of a well. "Grace, are you injured?" I think so. There's blood. But I need to tell you something. There's a man here. He says his name is Nathan Cross. He says you know him. Grace, is this man helping you? He's standing outside my car. He's whispering. He says he tried to warn someone about the others, but now he's one of them. He says the road collects us. Deputy Hayes was already en route without being asked. He'd been patrolling that stretch every night since the first call, unable to shake the feeling that he'd missed something crucial. Grace, stay in your vehicle. Lock the doors. He's not trying to get in. He's just standing there, whispering. There are others with him now, so many others. They all have the same wounds, the same dark eyes. God, there must be dozens of them. Grace, I need you to look away from them and focus on... They're showing me something, showing me the crashes, all the crashes. Every single person who's died on this road. They're all still here. They can't leave. The road won't let them. It feeds on us, on our last moments, recycling them endlessly. Hayes radioed in. I'm at marker 44. Rachel, there's an accident. Rachel's heart jumped. Finally, evidence that this wasn't a hoax. It's an old accident, Hayes continued, his voice tight with something Rachel had never heard from the veteran cop before. Fear. Probably been here for years. The car's rusted through, covered in vines. Pennsylvania plates from 1987. That's impossible. Grace's voice came through the phone. I just crashed 20 minutes ago. My car is a 2019 Honda. Grace, I need you to tell me exactly what you see around you. The woods, thick woods. But wait, the trees look wrong. They're too old, too gnarled. And the road looks different. Older. The asphalt is cracked and broken. This isn't right. This isn't how it looked when I was driving. There's something else. I can see layers like looking through water. Different versions of the road all existing at once. Rachel pulled up the historical records while keeping Grace on the line. In 1987, there had been an accident at mile marker 44. A woman named Grace Thompson, driving home from her night shift at the hospital, had gone off the road and hit a tree. She was never found, only her empty car. Grace, Rachel said carefully, what year do you think it is? 2024. It's September 15th, 2024. Why are you asking me that? Grace, I need you to stay calm, but... Oh God. Oh God. The whispers are getting louder. They're telling me the truth. I'm not alive, am I? I'm one of them. I've been one of them for 37 years. But I just remember driving home from work. I was tired, so tired. The road curved, but it curved wrong, like it wanted me to crash. The line didn't disconnect this time. Rachel could hear Grace crying. Then slowly, the crying turned to whispers. The same whispers as before, joining the chorus. Hayes reported finding human remains in the rusted car. DNA would later confirm it was Grace Thompson, dead since 1987. But the calls didn't stop. Every few nights between 2:30 and 3 a.m., Rachel would receive calls from accident victims on Old Hollow Road. Some were recent deaths she could verify. Others were from decades past. All of them started the same way, confused, frightened, thinking they had just crashed. All of them ended the same way, with the terrible realization that they were already dead, already part of the road's collection. Rachel started documenting everything. She found a pattern. Every person who called had died in a single-car accident where the cause was never fully determined. No mechanical failures, no obvious road hazards, no explanation for why they had suddenly veered off the road. The police reports all contained similar phrases. Driver appeared to swerve to avoid something, or witness reports seeing driver react to unknown stimulus. she also found something else. In the background of every call, if she enhanced the audio, she could hear the same underlying sound, a rhythmic thumping, like a heartbeat coming from somewhere deep beneath the asphalt. Rachel began spending her off hours in the county records office, digging through archives that hadn't been digitized. The librarian, Mrs. Dorothy Blackwood, was in her 80s and had lived in Crawford County all her life. When Rachel mentioned Old Hollow Road, the old woman's face went pale. "My grandmother used to tell stories," Dorothy said, pulling out a box of yellowed newspapers from the 1920s. "Before it was paved, when it was just a dirt trail, the Cherokee called it the Path of Lingering Shadows. They wouldn't travel it at night. The newspapers told disturbing stories. Construction crews in 1923 reporting tools that would move on their own. Workers who claimed to hear voices calling their names from the unfinished road. 3 workers had disappeared entirely, their bodies never found, though their tools were discovered arranged in strange patterns on the roadbed. There was a foreman," Dorothy continued, finding a specific article. "Samuel Morrison. He kept a journal, said the road didn't want to be built, that it fought them every step. But the state insisted it was the shortest route through the mountains." Rachel photographed every article, every mention. She found that accidents on Old Hollow Road went back to the very day it opened. The first victim was Samuel Morrison himself, his car found wrapped around a tree at what would become mile marker 43. His body missing. 3 weeks into the calls, Rachel made a decision that would change everything. She decided to drive Old Hollow Road herself at 2:30 a.m. She left her phone recording, broadcasting her location to Deputy Hayes, who reluctantly agreed to monitor her journey from dispatch. She'd marked every site where a caller had claimed to be. Hayes had tried to talk her out of it, but Rachel had developed a theory. The road wasn't just haunted. It was conscious, selecting its victims, collecting specific people for unknown reasons. At mile marker 40, her car radio started picking up whispers instead of the country station she'd been listening to. The voices were clearer than they'd ever been through the phone lines, speaking in languages she didn't recognize mixed with English, creating a horrible babble of the dead. At 41, her headlights began to flicker. Through the strobing light, she caught glimpses of figures standing among the trees, translucent and shimmering, their mouths moving in constant whispers. She recognized some from missing person reports she'd researched. At 42, she saw the first figure standing by the side of the road. It was David Kim. She recognized him from the missing person poster that had never been taken down at the station. He was standing exactly as the callers had described, wounds still fresh, eyes dark and hollow, mouth moving in constant whispers. But now she could see more detail. His clothes rippled as if underwater, and around him she could see fragments of his car, pieces of twisted metal that existed and didn't exist simultaneously. She didn't stop, couldn't stop. Her training and every instinct told her to keep driving. At mile marker 43, she saw Nathan Cross. He looked exactly as she'd imagined from his voice, middle-aged, wearing a business suit, standing beside an overturned car that wasn't quite there, translucent like a projection on smoke. His eyes tracked her vehicle as she passed, and she could swear she saw recognition in them. At 44, there were dozens of them, all standing along both sides of the road, all whispering, all watching her car pass with their hollow eyes. Some were dressed in modern clothes, others in outfits from decades past. One woman wore a 1950s nurse uniform. Another man was in overalls that looked handmade. Children, too, though Rachel tried not to look at them directly. And then she understood. She could hear their whispers clearly now, not through a phone line, but through her rolled-up windows. Witness us. Remember us. Don't let us be forgotten. At mile marker 45, her car suddenly lurched to the right. She fought the wheel, but it was like something had grabbed her vehicle and was pulling it toward the trees. She could see them all now, hundreds of them, victims of decades of accidents, all reaching out toward her car. Rachel! Rachel! What's happening? Hayes's voice crackled through her phone. They don't want to be forgotten, she gasped, fighting the wheel. That's all they want. To be remembered, to have someone know they're still here. She made a decision. Instead of fighting, she stopped the car, put it in park, sat there surrounded by the whispers of the dead. I see you, she said aloud, all of you, Jennifer Walsh, David Kim, Rosa Hernandez, Grace Thompson, Nathan Cross, I see all of you, and I won't forget. The pulling sensation stopped. The whispers changed, became almost grateful. One by one, the figures began to fade, not disappearing but becoming less solid, less desperate. She understood then that they weren't malevolent. They were trapped, caught in an endless loop of their final moments, desperate for someone to acknowledge their existence, to prove they had been real. She drove the rest of the road without incident and made it home safely, but the calls didn't stop. If anything, they increased. Word had somehow spread among the dead of Old Hollow Road that someone at dispatch would listen, would remember, would document their existence. Rachel started a special log, off the official records. Every caller got an entry. Their name, their story, the date of their accident, what they wanted someone to know. She became the unofficial chronicler of Old Hollow Road's victims. 6 months later, the state finally approved funding for a complete reconstruction of Old Hollow Road. When they tore up the old asphalt, construction workers found something that made the local news but was quickly suppressed. A mass grave beneath the road, decades old, maybe centuries. Native American remains mixed with settler bones, all buried beneath what had been a trail, then a dirt road, then pavement. The forensic archaeologist brought in to examine the site, Dr. Elena Vasquez, had a theory she only shared with Rachel. Roads like this, built on top of burial grounds, they sometimes develop what you might call a hunger. They recreate the violence done to them. Every death feeds the cycle. But Dr. Vasquez found something else. Something she didn't put in her official report. Among the remains were objects that didn't belong to any known time period. Metallic fragments with properties that couldn't be identified. Stones carved with symbols that predated any known indigenous culture in the region. This place has been significant for longer than human memory, she told Rachel privately. Whatever is here, it's old. Older than the Cherokee, older than the mound builders. The road might just be the latest manifestation of something that's always demanded sacrifice. The road was rebuilt with proper ceremonies, the remains reinterred in consecrated ground. The accidents on Old Hollow Road dropped to zero almost overnight. But Rachel still gets a call sometimes, late at night, from people who sound confused and frightened, reporting accidents on roads that don't exist anymore, highways that were torn down decades ago. She documents them all in her special log, knowing that somewhere, somewhen, these souls are still traveling dark roads, looking for someone to witness their last moments, someone to confirm that they existed, they mattered, they were real. The dispatcher who replaced Rachel on the night shift, Marcus Hoffman, lasted exactly 1 week before requesting a transfer. He couldn't handle the whispers, he said. Even when no one was calling, he could hear them through the static. Remember us. We're still here. The road remembers. The road always remembers. Marcus Hoffman's replacement was a former Army communications specialist named Sarah Hartley. She'd handled encrypted channels in Afghanistan, decoded messages from compromised units, and thought nothing could be worse than hearing a soldier's last words over a crackling radio. Old Hollow Road was about to prove her wrong. Sarah's first night was October 31st, Halloween. Rachel had oriented her during the day shift, carefully avoiding any mention of the unusual calls. The official story was that the road reconstruction had solved all problems. The unofficial story was something Sarah would have to discover herself. At 11:47 p.m., her first call came in. 911, what's your emergency? Heavy breathing then. This is Officer Daniel Morrison, badge number 4479. I need backup at mile marker 38, Old Hollow Road, officer down. Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard. There was no Officer Morrison in their system. Sir, can you confirm your badge number and department? Crawford County Sheriff's Department. I've been shot. The suspect is still here. Please, send backup. Sarah dispatched units immediately while checking the records. Her blood chilled when she found it. Officer Daniel Morrison, Crawford County Sheriff's Department, killed in the line of duty on October 31st, 1974. 50 years ago, exactly. Officer Morrison, units are en route. Can you describe the suspect? No, this isn't right. He looks like me. Exactly like me. Same uniform, same badge number, same bullet wound. Through the static, Sarah could hear something else. A second voice, identical to Morrison's, whispering, "You pulled me over. You made me stop. Now we both stop forever." Deputy Hayes and his new partner, Deputy Jessica Alvarez, were already racing toward the location. Sarah had read their reports. They'd become the unofficial investigators of Old Hollow Road's mysteries. Alvarez was younger, a transfer from Louisville who'd specifically requested Crawford County after hearing about the strange occurrences. She had a degree in folklore studies alongside her criminal justice training, an unusual combination that proved invaluable. "Daniel," Sarah said, using his first name to establish rapport, "tell me what happened that night, the real night." I pulled over a speeding vehicle, 1968. Mustang, black. Driver looked wrong, like he'd been dead for days. When I approached the window, he turned to me and said, "You're 50 years too late, officer." Then he shot me. But that doesn't make sense. How could he have been dead before he shot me? Sarah pulled up more records, cross-referencing dates. In 1924, exactly 50 years before Morrison's death, a man named William Morrison, Daniel's grandfather, had disappeared on Old Hollow Road. His car was found at mile marker 38. Engine still running. Driver's door open, no sign of William. "Daniel, was your grandfather named William?" Silence then. "How did you know that?" "I think your grandfather's disappearance and your death are connected. The road, it seems to replay tragedies in cycles. The driver," Daniel's voice was becoming more distorted, more distant. I can see him clearly now. "It is my grandfather, but he's young, my age when I died, and he's saying something. The road demands a Morrison every 50 years. Oh God, that means 2024, Sarah finished. This year, tonight." Hayes's voice crackled through the radio. "Dispatch, we're at marker 38. Sarah, you need to see this. Describe it. There are two vehicles here, superimposed on each other like a double exposure. A 1974 patrol car and a 1968 Mustang. They're translucent, flickering in and out of existence. And there are two figures standing between them, both in uniform, both with the same face." Through the phone, Daniel Morrison's voice was changing, multiplying. He's explaining it to me now. "Every 50 years, the road calls a Morrison back. We police this stretch eternally, pulling over our own ancestors, our own descendants, creating an endless loop of death. And tonight it wants a third. Sarah frantically checked the current roster. There was one Morrison on the force, Deputy Thomas Morrison, Daniel's nephew, currently off duty. Hayes, we need to find Thomas Morrison right now. Do not let him anywhere near Old Hollow Road. But even as she said it, a new voice came through her headset. Not through the 911 system, but directly into her ear. Too late, dispatcher, I'm already here. Thomas Morrison was standing at mile marker 38, staring at the ghostly vehicles, at his uncle and great-great-grandfather locked in their eternal traffic stop. He'd been drawn there, he later explained, by dreams that had plagued him for weeks. Dreams of driving endless dark roads, of pulling over cars that contained his own face, of shooting and being shot in an infinite recursion. "Tommy, get out of there," Hayes shouted, but Thomas seemed entranced. Through multiple channels now, the 911 call, radio, and something that seemed to bypass all technology and speak directly into Sarah's mind. She could hear the whispers of every Morrison who had ever traveled this road. Dozens of voices across 2 centuries, all converging on this moment. The road was here before the town, the collective voices explained. The Morrisons were the first to try to tame it, to build across it. We made a deal, one of us every 50 years, to police the boundary between the living and the dead, to keep the restless spirits from spilling over into your world. Sarah understood now. The accidents, the calls, the whispers, they were all symptoms of something much older and darker. Old Hollow Road wasn't just haunted, it was a boundary line, a DMZ between worlds. "There has to be another way," Sarah said into the phone. "We reconstructed the road. We put the bodies to rest." "You put some to rest," Daniel's single voice separated from the chorus. "But the road itself is alive. It's been feeding on death for centuries. First, the natives who used it as a burial path, then the settlers who built over their graves, then the modern travelers who die in the dark. It's grown fat on souls." Thomas Morrison had stepped out of his personal vehicle. He'd driven here despite being off duty, called by something in his blood. He was walking toward the ghostly patrol car. "Tommy, stop!" Alvarez physically grabbed him, but he shook her off with surprising strength. "I can hear them all," Thomas said, his voice transmitting through Hayes's radio. "Every Morrison back to the first one who carved this road from the wilderness. They're saying I have a choice. I can take my place in the cycle, or, Sarah prompted, or I can break it. But breaking it means releasing everything the road has been holding back. Every spirit, every whisper, every death. They'll all be free to roam." Sarah made a command decision. "Do it! Break the cycle." "Sarah, no," Hayes protested. "We don't know what that means." But Thomas had already decided. He walked to the exact point between the 2 ghostly vehicles, pulled out his service weapon and fired it into the air. Not to harm anyone, but as a declaration. "I am Thomas Morrison, last of my line on this road. I reject the compact. I break the chain. Let the road release what it has hoarded." The effect was immediate and terrifying. The asphalt beneath their feet began to crack, not with damage but with light. A cold white light that poured from beneath the road surface. The ghostly vehicles solidified, then shattered like glass. Daniel and William Morrison became fully visible for a moment, smiled at each other, then dissolved into the light. But they weren't the only ones. Every person who had ever died on Old Hollow Road began to manifest. Not as the desperate, whispering spirits Rachel had encountered, but as fully formed apparitions, each one glowing with that same cold light. They stood in rows along the road, hundreds of them, from different eras, different centuries even, and they were all moving toward town. Dispatch. Hayes's voice was tight with controlled panic. We have a code black situation. Multiple spectral entities moving toward populated areas. Sarah had never heard of a code black, but she could guess. How many? All of them. Every soul this road has taken. They're not hostile. They're just walking. Like they're finally going home. Over the next 3 hours, Sarah coordinated the strangest emergency response in Crawford County history. The spirits walked through town, each one heading to a specific destination. Some went to houses where descendants lived, standing in doorways just long enough to be seen, to be acknowledged. Others went to the cemetery, finding graves that had been waiting for them for decades or centuries. The 911 lines exploded with calls. People reporting seeing dead relatives, historical figures, victims of accidents they'd only heard about in family stories. But none of the spirits spoke or interacted. They just wanted to be seen, to be witnessed, to complete their journey home. Mrs. Eleanor Garrison called to report that her grandmother, missing since 1952, had appeared in the kitchen where she used to make Sunday dinners. The spirit had smiled, touched the old china cabinet, and faded away. Young Timothy Fletcher saw a boy his own age in pioneer-era clothing standing by the old well in their backyard. Historical records later confirmed a Fletcher child had drowned there in 1847. The Riverside nursing home reported dozens of spirits visiting elderly residents, long-lost spouses, siblings, friends, all taking a moment to say goodbye without words. Sarah handled each call with the same calm professionalism. We're aware of the situation. Please remain calm. Do not attempt to interact with them. They'll pass through shortly. But privately, she was documenting everything, building on Rachel's work. She noticed patterns. The spirits were visiting in chronological order, oldest to newest, as if the road was releasing them in layers, peeling back centuries of death like geological strata. By dawn, it was over. Every spirit had found its destination and faded away. The road, Old Hollow Road, had changed too. The asphalt looked newer somehow, cleaner, as if a weight had been lifted from it. Thomas Morrison survived the night, but something in him had changed. His eyes carried a weight they hadn't before, the look of someone who had seen too much. He resigned from the force the next week, moved out of state, broke the chain of Morrisons in Crawford County that had lasted 200 years. But the calls didn't stop entirely. Now, instead of desperate whispers from Old Hollow Road, Sarah started getting calls from other roads, other dark stretches of asphalt with their own hungry histories. Word had somehow spread in the spirit world that Crawford County Dispatch would listen, would help, would find a way to break the cycles. Sarah developed a new protocol. Every time she got one of these calls, she would document it, research it, find the pattern. Because there was always a pattern, a family curse, a historical injustice, a debt being paid in blood across generations. She became an expert in the occult history of Kentucky's road system. The routes that followed native hunting paths, the highways built over battlefields, the modern interstates that bisected ancient sacred sites. Each one had its own ghosts, its own whispers, its own hunger. She learned that Interstate 75 had been built along an old buffalo trace that indigenous peoples had considered sacred. Every year, on the anniversary of its opening, truckers reported seeing massive, ghostly herds crossing the highway. Route 23, the country music highway, carried the voices of musicians who died traveling to Nashville, their songs echoing through car radios at 3 a.m. The Mountain Parkway had its own phenomenon. Drivers reported their vehicles suddenly accelerating or braking without input, as if invisible hands were taking the wheel. Sarah traced it back to a stagecoach route where drivers had been murdered by bandits in the 1800s. The ghost drivers were still trying to escape their attackers. 3 months after the Morrison incident, Sarah thought she had seen everything Old Hollow Road had to offer. She was wrong. The call that came in at 12:03 a.m. on a freezing January night would reveal that the road's hunger was just one symptom of something much larger. 911. What's your emergency? The voice was young, scared, female. My name is Ashley Williams. I'm following a convoy of trucks on Highway 68, but something's wrong. These trucks, they don't have any license plates and they're glowing. Highway 68 intersected with Old Hollow Road about 15 miles from the town center. Sarah immediately pulled up the traffic cameras. The highway was empty. Ashley, where exactly are you? Just past mile marker 90. There are 5 trucks, military-looking, moving in perfect formation. But when I try to pass them, my car won't accelerate. It's like I'm stuck behind them. Sarah checked the caller's location through cell tower triangulation. Ashley's phone was indeed on Highway 68, moving at exactly 35 miles per hour. Ashley, I need you to describe these trucks in detail. They look old, like from World War II, maybe? Canvas-covered backs, big wheels. The canvas is torn on the truck directly in front of me, and I can see inside. There are people in there, soldiers. But they're all wrong. They're transparent, and they keep flickering like bad reception. Deputy Jessica Alvarez was on patrol nearby. Sarah dispatched her immediately while keeping Ashley on the line. Ashley, try to slow down. Let the trucks get ahead. I'm trying. My foot's completely off the gas, but my car keeps moving at the same speed. Oh God, one of the soldiers is looking at me. His face, half of it is missing, but he's smiling. He's pointing at something. Sarah enhanced the audio from Ashley's call. In the background, she could hear something that made her blood run cold. Military radio chatter from the 1940s, call signs and coordinates that hadn't been used in 80 years. She quickly searched the historical records. On January 15, 1944, exactly 80 years ago to the night, a convoy of military trucks had disappeared on Highway 68. 5 trucks carrying soldiers from Fort Campbell to a training exercise. They never arrived. No wreckage was ever found. Ashley, what's the soldier pointing at? The side of the road. There's a turnoff coming up, an old dirt road. The convoy is turning. My car is turning too. I'm not steering, but we're following them off the highway. Alvarez's voice crackled through the radio. Dispatch, I'm at mile marker 90. I can see tire tracks turning off onto the old Turner property road, but there's no vehicle. The tracks just appear out of nowhere. Sarah made a decision that violated all protocol. She patched Alvarez directly into the 911 call. Ashley, this is Deputy Alvarez. I'm right behind you, but I can't see your car. You're in some kind of temporal displacement. Stay calm and keep describing what you see. The dirt road is wrong. Ashley's voice was shaking. It's not dirt anymore, it's paved, but old-style paving, like cobblestones. And there are buildings that shouldn't be here, old buildings, military barracks. Sarah cross-referenced maps from the 1940s. The Turner property had been Camp Hollow, a secret military training facility, closed and demolished in 1945 after a fatal incident. The incident, she discovered in classified documents that had recently been declassified, involved an entire barracks of soldiers who had died from an unknown cause. They were found at their posts, standing at attention, with no visible injuries. Ashley, the convoy is taking you to Camp Hollow. It doesn't exist in our time anymore, but somehow you're seeing it as it was. The trucks are stopping. The soldiers are getting out. They're lining up for inspection. There's an officer walking down the line. He stops at each soldier, touches their shoulder, and they become solid, real. He's coming toward my car now. Through the phone, Sarah could hear boots on gravel, getting closer. He's at my window. He's asking me to roll it down. Should I? No, both Sarah and Alvarez said simultaneously. But Ashley's voice had changed, become distant. He says his name is Colonel Marcus Freeman. He says they've been driving for 80 years looking for the way home. He says I can help them. He's showing me something, a map. It's covered in red lines, like a web across the entire state. Sarah pulled up everything she could find on Colonel Freeman. The records were mostly classified, but what she found was disturbing. Freeman had been experimenting with something called ley line navigation, the theory that ancient energy lines crisscross the Earth and could be used for transportation. His experiments had been shut down after the Camp Hollow incident, all research destroyed. Or so the Army claimed. Ashley, do not trust him. Whatever he's showing you, it's beautiful, Ashley interrupted, her voice dreamy now. The lines connect everything. Every road, every path, every trail. They're all part of the same network. The convoy wasn't lost. They were exploring. They found a way to drive between worlds, between times, but they couldn't find their way back until now. Ashley, listen to my voice. You need to get out of there. He says the road we rebuilt, Old Hollow Road, it was a major ley line. When we reconstructed it, we broke something. We severed the connection that was keeping them in their loop. Now they're bleeding through. Not just them, but everyone who's ever gotten lost on the between roads. Alvarez had gotten out of her patrol car and was walking along the tire tracks that led to nowhere. Sarah, the air here is wrong. It's shimmering like heat waves, but it's freezing out. I can smell diesel exhaust and gunpowder. Stay back, Jessica. But Ashley's next words changed everything. The colonel says he can show me how to fix it. How to reconnect the lines properly, but he needs someone from our time to do it. Someone to be the bridge. Ashley, no, I can see them all now. Not just this convoy. Hundreds of vehicles from different times. Pioneer wagons, modern cars, 18-wheelers, all stuck in the between spaces. All waiting for someone to reconnect the roads. The colonel says if we don't do it, they'll all start bleeding through at once. Every missing vehicle, every vanished traveler for the past 300 years, all trying to return through the broken point at Old Hollow Road. Sarah thought about the implications. Thousands of vehicles suddenly materializing on modern roads. The casualties would be catastrophic. What does he need you to do? Drive the pattern? Follow the convoy to 5 specific points. Create a pentagram of roads that will reestablish the ley line network. But once I start, I can't stop. I'll be part of the pattern until someone else takes my place. How long? Time works differently on the between roads. What feels like hours to me could be years in your world, or minutes. The colonel doesn't know. Alvarez's voice cut in. The shimmer is expanding. Something's coming through. Through Ashley's phone, Sarah could hear the colonel speaking directly now, his voice carrying the authority of 8 decades of command. Dispatcher, we don't have much time. The breach is widening. Either your girl drives the pattern, or we all come through at once. Every lost soul on every dark road in Kentucky. Your choice. Sarah looked at her screens. Reports were already coming in from around the county. Phantom vehicles appearing on roads, causing accidents as modern drivers swerved to avoid Model Ts and horse-drawn carriages that weren't quite there. A semi-truck driver on E75 reported nearly jackknifing to avoid a covered wagon. A family on Highway 27 called in hysterics after a 1920s fire truck had materialized in front of them, bells clanging, before vanishing. The sheriff himself reported seeing a chain gang from the 1930s working on a section of road that had been repaved decades ago. Ashley, I can't ask you to. You're not asking, I'm volunteering. Give me the authorization to proceed, dispatcher, that's all I need. Sarah thought about protocol, about liability, about the report she'd have to write. Then she thought about the thousands of souls trapped between worlds, and the thousands more who would die if they all came through at once. Ashley Williams, this is dispatcher Sarah Hartley, Crawford County 911. You are authorized to proceed with emergency measures to contain the temporal breach. Godspeed. Thank you. Tell my mom. Tell her I'll be home when I can. The line didn't go dead. Sarah could still hear everything. The convoy starting up. Ashley's car following. The sound of engines that had been running for 80 years. Alvarez reported that the shimmer had formed into a visible convoy of ghostly trucks, with a modern Honda Civic bringing up the rear. Over the next 5 hours, Sarah tracked Ashley's impossible journey. Cell towers registered her phone at 5 points around the county, forming a perfect pentagram with Old Hollow Road at its center. At each point, Alvarez reported seeing the convoy materialize briefly, perform some kind of maneuver, a circle, a figure 8, patterns that hurt to watch, then vanish. At 5:15 a.m., as the first light of dawn touched the horizon, Ashley's voice came through one last time. Pattern complete. The roads are reconnecting. I can feel them all clicking into place like a massive puzzle. The colonel says thank you. They can go home now. All of them can go home. What about you, Ashley? I'm the keystone now. I have to drive the pattern once a year, every year, to keep it stable. January 15th, midnight to dawn. It's not so bad. I've met others who do the same thing on different nights, maintaining different patterns. We're like road guardians, keeping the living and the dead in their proper lanes. Will we hear from you again? Every year, same night. I'll call in, let you know the pattern is holding. And Sarah, check the records. Check how many people have gone missing on specific dates, then returned exactly 1 year later with no memory of where they've been. We've always been here, driving the between roads, keeping the world separate. You just never knew to look for us. The line went dead. Alvarez found Ashley's car at mile marker 90, engine off, keys in the ignition. Ashley herself was gone. Her family reported her missing, but Sarah knew she'd be back. January 15th of next year, driving through the night, maintaining the pattern that kept the worlds from colliding. Sarah did check the records. Ashley was right. Dozens of cases over the years, people who vanished on specific dates and returned exactly 1 year later, unable to explain where they'd been. The dates formed a pattern themselves, a calendar of guardians, each responsible for their night, their route, their section of the vast network of roads that connected more than just cities. She started a new log, separate from the official records. Not of the dead this time, but of the guardians. The living people who had chosen to drive the between roads, keeping the rest of humanity safe from the things that traveled in the spaces between here and there, now and then. She found Marcus Rodriguez, who disappeared every February 29th, maintaining a pattern that only needed checking every leap year. Jennifer Park vanished during every total solar eclipse, her route following the path of totality. Robert Thompson, no relation to Grace, drove the interstate system every summer solstice, his pattern covering 3 states. Each guardian had their own story, their own reason for accepting the burden. Some had been trapped like Ashley, forced to choose between becoming a guardian or allowing catastrophe. Others had volunteered, drawn by dreams or visions to take up the responsibility. 1 year had passed since Ashley Williams became a guardian of the between roads. Sarah Hartley had documented 17 more guardians in that time, each maintaining their own pattern, their own night. She thought she understood the system now. She was about to learn that the system was breaking down. The call came in at 11:58 p.m. on January 14th, 2 minutes before Ashley's scheduled pattern drive. 911, what's your emergency? Sarah? Sarah Hartley? The voice was Ashley's, but different, older, exhausted, frightened. I need help. Something's wrong with the pattern. Ashley? You're early. The pattern doesn't start until... Time doesn't work the same for us anymore. I've been driving for what feels like decades, Sarah, maybe centuries, and I'm not alone. All the guardians are here, pulled from their roots. Someone's gathering us. Sarah immediately alerted Hayes and Alvarez, who had become her de facto paranormal response team. Ashley, where are you? All of us are at the convergence point, the place where all the patterns intersect. It's God, Sarah. It's Old Hollow Road, mile marker 43, the exact center of the web. Who's gathering you? He calls himself the first driver. He says he's the one who originally mapped the ley lines back before there were roads, when they were just trails, native paths. He says we've been doing it wrong, that the patterns we're driving are keeping something in, not out. Through the phone, Sarah could hear other voices, dozens of them, all talking at once. Some in English, some in languages she didn't recognize, some that might have predated language itself. Ashley, I need you to tell me exactly what you see. We're in a place that's all times at once. I can see Old Hollow Road as a deer trail, a colonial post road, a modern highway, all superimposed. And beneath it all, there's something else, something huge. The road isn't just a road, Sarah, it's a seal. A massive seal holding something down. Hayes and Alvarez were already racing toward mile marker 43. Sarah pulled up every piece of research she'd compiled over the past year, looking for references to the first driver. She found it in a journal from 1798, written by a surveyor named Josiah Hollowell, the man Old Hollow Road was named after. He wrote about meeting a native elder who warned him not to build roads in certain places, that some paths were meant to contain the hunger beneath. The elder had spoken of a being who had walked the paths since before memory, maintaining the seals that kept the world safe from what lay below. Ashley, the first driver, can you describe him? He's not really human anymore. He's been driving the between roads for so long that he's become part of them. He looks like a man made of asphalt and yellow lines, with headlights for eyes. He says the patterns we've been driving were never meant to keep the world separate. They were meant to keep something asleep. What something? The thing that creates the hunger in roads. The thing that feeds on travelers. It's not the roads themselves. It's what's underneath them. Something ancient, something that was here before humans, before animals, maybe before life itself. The native peoples knew about it. They built their trails in specific patterns to keep it dormant. Sarah's mind raced. Every piece of the puzzle was clicking into place. The accidents, the disappearances, the ghosts, they were all just symptoms. But when colonizers came, Ashley continued, they built their own roads, ignoring the sacred patterns. They broke the seal partially. That's when roads started becoming hungry, started taking people. The guardians were a stopgap measure trying to maintain enough of the pattern to keep the thing sleeping. And now, the first driver says it's waking up anyway. The reconstruction of Old Hollow Road was the final straw. We didn't just break the seal, we shattered it. He's gathered all the guardians here to make a choice. Through the radio, Hayes reported, "Sarah, we're at marker 43. The entire road is glowing. It looks like lava beneath glass. And there are vehicles everywhere. Hundreds of them, from every era, all parked in concentric circles around a central point. Ashley, what choice? We can all drive together, one last time. Every guardian, every pattern, all at once. Create a massive surge of energy to either reseal the thing forever or release it completely. But here's the catch. If we reseal it, we seal ourselves in with it. All the guardians become permanent parts of the seal, driving the between roads for eternity with no hope of return. If we release it, if you release it, then it consumes every road, every path, every connection between places. Humanity goes back to isolated pockets, unable to travel, unable to connect. Civilization collapses, but the thing feeds once and goes back to sleep for millions of years. Sarah could hear arguing in the background, guardians debating in dozens of languages across centuries of time. There's a third option, a new voice said through Ashley's phone. It was deep, resonant, like the rumble of an engine that had been running since the invention of the wheel. The first driver. Dispatcher Sarah Hartley. You've been documenting us, learning our patterns. You understand the system better than any non-guardian ever has. You could take our place. What? One person? Driving all the patterns simultaneously. It's never been done because no one has ever known all the patterns. But you do. You have them all in your logs. Every route, every time, every guardian's path. You could become the master guardian, maintaining every seal yourself. That's impossible. I can't be in multiple places at once. You wouldn't need to be. Time doesn't work the same on the between roads. You could drive them all in, what would feel like a single night to you, but would be spread across the entire year in real time. But the cost? Tell me. You would age 1 year for every pattern you complete. With 17 patterns, plus the master pattern that connects them all, you would age 18 years in a single night every year. A normal human lifespan would give you maybe 2 or 3 cycles before you died of old age. Sarah did the math. She was 32. 3 cycles would make her 86, assuming the strain didn't kill her sooner. But those 3 cycles would give us time, the first driver continued. Time to find a permanent solution. Time to properly map the ley lines and build roads that strengthen the seal instead of weakening it. Time to train a new generation of guardians who understand what they're really doing. Through the radio, Alvarez's voice was urgent. Sarah, whatever's happening, it's accelerating. The glow is getting brighter. Cracks are appearing in the road. Something's trying to push through from underneath. Ashley's voice came back, desperate. Sarah, we need a decision. The guardians are splitting. Half want to seal it, half want to release it. Without consensus, the patterns will collapse, and the thing breaks free anyway. Sarah thought about her life. No family, few friends. A job that had become an obsession with the paranormal. She thought about Ashley, who'd given up her normal life to protect others. She thought about the thousands of people who traveled these roads every day, never knowing how close they were to something ancient and hungry. How do I do it? She asked. The first driver's voice carried what might have been respect. Come to mile marker 43. Bring your logs, drive through the gateway we're about to open. Once you're on the between roads, we'll teach you the patterns. But understand, once you start, there's no backing out. You'll be changing on a fundamental level, becoming something between human and road, between flesh and asphalt. Sarah grabbed her logs, her keys, and left the dispatch center without a word to her replacement. She drove toward Old Hollow Road, watching the speedometer climb. As she approached mile marker 43, she saw them. Hundreds of vehicles from across time, all with their headlights on, creating a tunnel of light. At the center, a shimmering gateway, like heat mirages rising from hot asphalt. She stopped her car, got out, and walked to where Hayes and Alvarez were standing. "Sarah, what are you doing?" Hayes demanded. "My job, protecting the people of this county, just in a different way." She handed him her badge. "Tell them I had a family emergency. Tell them whatever you want, but document everything that happens next." She got back in her car and drove toward the gateway. As she passed through, she felt the change immediately. The world exploded into layers, past, present, future, all visible simultaneously. She could see every road that had ever existed in this spot, every traveler who had ever passed through. Ashley's car pulled up beside hers, but the Ashley inside was older, tired, relieved. "Thank you," she mouthed. The first driver appeared in her rearview mirror, though she hadn't seen any vehicle behind her. The first pattern is the hardest. It's the master pattern, the one that connects all the others. You'll drive the shape of the seal itself, a sigil that existed before humans had words for such things. Follow me. For the next subjective eternity, or single night, depending on perspective, Sarah learned to drive the between roads. She felt her body changing with each pattern completed. Her hands became more sensitive to vibrations in the steering wheel, able to feel the ley lines beneath any road. Her eyes could see in spectrums that had no names, perceiving the flow of energy that connected all paths. The patterns were complex, multidimensional. She drove routes that folded back on themselves, creating temporal loops. She navigated roads that existed in multiple realities simultaneously, choosing which version to solidify with each turn of the wheel. By the time she completed the 18th pattern, she had aged exactly as predicted. Her hair was streaked with gray, lines creased her face, but her eyes held knowledge that no normal human could comprehend. When she emerged from the gateway at dawn, Hayes and Alvarez were still there, having waited all night. To them, she had been gone for 6 hours. To her, it had been months of subjective time. "It's done," she told them. "The seal is reinforced. The Guardians are free, and I'll be back next year to do it again." Hayes looked at her transformed appearance in shock. "Sarah, you look older." "I know, it's the price." She turned to look at Old Hollow Road, now quiet and normal-looking in the dawn light. But the road isn't hungry anymore. None of them are. I'm feeding them now, giving them what they need through the patterns. A year of my life for every year of peace. She drove away, knowing she'd return to dispatch, train her replacement, document what she'd learned. She had maybe 2 more cycles in her, 3 if she was lucky. But in that time, she would also search for a permanent solution, a way to seal the thing beneath the roads forever without sacrificing guardians. The calls still came in to Crawford County 911. Lost travelers, confused spirits, temporal anomalies. But now they also got calls from people who'd glimpsed a strange car driving impossible patterns on empty roads at night. A car that seemed to exist in multiple times at once, driven by a woman who aged years in minutes, maintaining the barriers between worlds. Sarah Hartley had become a legend on the between roads, the master guardian who drove all patterns, the dispatcher who had answered the ultimate emergency call, the one from the roads themselves, begging for someone to keep the ancient hunger at bay. In her logs, which Hayes faithfully maintained after her transformation, she wrote, "Every road is a story. Every journey is a choice. And sometimes the best way to save everyone else's journey is to make your own endless. I am Sarah Hartley, dispatcher, guardian, keeper of patterns. I drive so others may arrive safely. I age so others may live fully. I maintain the seal so the hunger sleeps. This is my emergency. This is my response." 2 years and 2 cycles later, Sarah Hartley, now appearing to be in her late 60s, despite being only 34 in linear time, returned to the dispatch. Center 1 last time. Her body was failing, the strain of maintaining all patterns finally taking its toll. She found her replacement, a young woman named Maria Santos, already somehow attuned to the strange calls that came in during the night shifts. Maria had been documenting them, just as Sarah once had. "You're the one," Sarah said simply, "the one who'll find the permanent solution." Maria looked at her, understanding dawning in her eyes. "The calls, they're all real, aren't they? Every one, and they're going to get worse. My third cycle is coming, but I won't survive it. The patterns are already starting to fray. But I've learned something in my drives, something the first driver didn't know." Sarah pulled out a final log, one she'd written while driving the between roads, when time moved differently and thoughts became clearer. The thing beneath isn't evil. It's not malicious, it's just hungry. It's a remnant from when the earth was young, when life energy flowed freely. Roads concentrate life energy. Thousands of people traveling, thinking, feeling. It feeds on that concentration. But what if we could feed it differently? Maria read through the log, her eyes widening. Solar roads. Roads that generate their own energy. You want to turn the entire road system into a feeding mechanism? Not want to. Have to. I've already started the process. Every pattern I drive leaves behind a trace of possibility, a potential for change. The roads are evolving, becoming something new, but it'll take time, maybe a generation, to complete the transformation. Sarah handed Maria a set of keys. Not car keys, but something older, more symbolic. They seemed to shift between metal and light, solid and ethereal. These are the keys to the between roads. Not for driving, you'll find a better way, but for understanding, for seeing the connections. You're going to be the dispatcher who doesn't just respond to emergencies but prevents them. Over the next month, Sarah trained Maria in everything she'd learned. Not how to drive the patterns, that burden would die with Sarah, but how to recognize the signs of the hunger awakening, how to identify potential guardians, how to read the ley lines beneath modern roads. On January 15th, Sarah drove her final pattern. Maria monitored from dispatch, along with Hayes and Alvarez, who had become the unofficial guardians of the guardians. At 3:33 a.m., Sarah's voice came through the radio one last time. "The patterns are shifting. I can feel them changing, evolving. The roads are learning to feed themselves. It's working, Maria. The transformation is beginning. Sarah, your vitals, I know, this body is done, but the patterns aren't. They're becoming self-sustaining. The roads themselves are becoming the guardians now. Every mile of asphalt, every inch of concrete, learning to process and redirect the energy that feeds the hunger." Through the night, reports came in from across the country. Roads were glowing softly, not with the violent light of something breaking through, but with a gentle luminescence. Drivers reported feeling strangely calm on previously dangerous stretches. Accident rates plummeted to zero for those few hours. At dawn, Sarah's car was found at mile marker 43, empty, engine still running. But the roads around it had changed. The asphalt had vein-like patterns in it, almost organic, like a living thing that had learned to sustain itself. Maria took over as head dispatcher, but her real job became monitoring the transformation. Over the following years, she documented the evolution of the road system. Engineers couldn't explain why roads were lasting longer, requiring less maintenance. They couldn't explain the subtle patterns that appeared in the asphalt, patterns that seemed random but that Maria recognized as fragments of the guardian routes. The strange calls continued, but they changed too. Instead of desperate whispers from the dead, they became reports of wonder. Drivers seeing glimpses of other times, other possibilities, but safely, like looking through glass. The roads had become windows instead of traps, boundaries instead of hunting grounds. Maria documented it all, building on Sarah's work. She discovered that certain people could still access the between roads, not as guardians but as explorers, mapping the spaces between spaces, learning about the true infrastructure of reality. She found that children born after the transformation could sometimes see the patterns naturally, their young minds not yet trained to ignore the impossible. These children grew up to become engineers, architects, urban planners, all unconsciously guided to build in harmony with the ley lines. The old guard, Hayes, Alvarez, Rachel Martinez, who still consulted from retirement, they formed a secret council, protecting the knowledge of what had really happened. They knew that if the wrong people learned about the between roads, about the thing beneath, they might try to exploit it, potentially undoing everything Sarah had sacrificed to achieve. In her final log entry, Maria wrote, "Sarah Hartley gave 18 years of her life in 3 years of linear time to save countless others. She transformed from dispatcher to guardian to catalyst. Because of her sacrifice, the roads are no longer hungry. They're alive, yes, but symbiotically rather than parasitically. The old emergency is over. A new age of transportation has begun, though most will never know it. Roads that repair themselves, paths that protect their travelers, highways that exist in perfect harmony with the ancient hunger that once threatened to consume everything. Every time you drive at night and feel inexplicably safe, every time you arrive at your destination without incident, every time the road seems to guide you home, that's Sarah's legacy. The patterns she drove are now written into the very asphalt. A permanent guardian network that requires no human sacrifice to maintain." The dispatchers of Crawford County continue to receive unusual calls. We continue to document them. But now we know that not all emergencies need the same response. Sometimes the best way to handle a crisis is to transform the system itself. The roads remember. They remember Sarah Hartley, the dispatcher who answered their call for help. They remember the guardians who drove the patterns. They remember the ancient hunger that once ruled them. But more than that, they remember how to be safe, how to be home, how to carry travelers not to their deaths, but to their destinations. This is the true emergency response, not just saving lives in the moment, but changing the very nature of the danger itself. The whispers from the wreckage have become songs of safe passage. The rural roads have become protectors rather than predators. And somewhere in the between spaces, Sarah Hartley drives eternal, not as a guardian anymore, but as part of the road itself, ensuring that no traveler is ever truly lost. No journey ever truly ends in darkness. When you call 911, you expect someone to answer. Sarah Hartley answered the call of the roads themselves, and in doing so, she saved us all. Dispatcher Monica Reeves had been working the evening shifts at Metro Central 911 for 12 years. She had handled assaults, injuries, heart attacks, and hostage situations. But a call that came in at 7:43 p.m. on a gloomy Thursday evening would forever change her approach to domestic emergencies. The dispatch center hummed with its usual controlled chaos. Multiple operators handling calls, supervisors monitoring high-priority situations, the constant background chatter of radio communications. Monica's station, number 17, had been her home away from home for over a decade. She knew every crack in the worn keyboard, every quirk of the aging computer system, every shadow that crossed the reinforced windows as the sun set over the city. 911, what's your emergency? Please help me. The voice was female, young, trembling with a particular quality of fear that Monica had learned to recognize. Not just immediate danger, but the exhaustion of prolonged terror. "My husband is going to kill me, but you have to believe me when I tell you what's happening." Monica's training kicked in immediately. Domestic violence calls required delicate handling. She adjusted her headset, fingers already moving across her keyboard to initiate the response protocol. The computer screen filled with fields for her to complete. Location, nature of threat, weapons involved, injuries sustained. "Ma'am, I'm dispatching officers to your location right now. Can you tell me your name and address?" "Jennifer Huang, apartment 4B, 1847 Riverside Complex. Please hurry, but you need to know something. There's someone else here, someone only I can see." Monica's fingers paused for a fraction of a second before continuing. In her years of experience, she'd heard many things. People under the influence of substances, mental health crises, elaborate deceptions. But something in Jennifer's voice made her pay closer attention. There was a clarity beneath the fear, a desperate need to be believed rather than the confusion of hallucination. She flagged the call as high priority, adding a note about potential mental health component to domestic violence situation. Officers Ryan Mitchell and Sandra Foster were 6 minutes out. Mitchell was a 15-year veteran with a calm demeanor that could diffuse almost any situation. Foster, younger but sharp, had a gift for reading people that made her invaluable in complex domestic calls. "Jennifer, are you saying there's a third person in your apartment besides you and your husband?" "Yes, but my husband can't see them. They've been here for weeks, telling me things, showing me things. They told me tonight was the night Marcus would finally do it." The temperature in the dispatch center seemed to drop. Monica had heard many claims over the years, but this had a different quality. She glanced at her supervisor, Tom Rodriguez, who was monitoring her call. He raised an eyebrow but nodded for her to continue. "What did he do, Jennifer?" "I don't know. The woman won't tell me directly. She just keeps saying, 'He buried the truth in the walls.' She points at the walls and cries. God, she's crying blood now." Monica made a quick decision. Whether Jennifer was experiencing a mental health crisis or not, the fear in her voice was real. The physiological responses she could hear, the rapid breathing, the vocal strain, the barely controlled panic. These were not performances. "Jennifer, I need you to get to a safe room, preferably one with a lock. Can you do that?" "The bathroom. I can get to the bathroom." "Good. Go there now. Take your phone." Through the phone, Monica heard the sounds of movement, quick footsteps on hardwood, the rustle of clothing, a door closing with urgency, the click of a lock turning. Then Jennifer's whispered voice, even more frightened than before. "I'm in the bathroom." But she followed me. The woman. She's standing in the bathtub pointing at the wall behind the tiles. Officers Mitchell and Foster radioed that they were 3 minutes out. Monica kept Jennifer talking, using the techniques she'd learned for maintaining caller engagement during crisis situations. But this was different from her usual scripts. "Can you describe this woman?" "She's young, maybe late 20s, Asian features, long black hair that looks wet, but not with water. Something darker. She's wearing a floral dress. I can see cherry blossoms on it, but it's torn. There are pieces missing, like something clawed at it. And her neck, there are bruises on her neck, like someone strangled her. Purple and black marks in the shape of fingers." Monica's blood chilled. She minimized the active call screen and pulled up the apartment complex's history in a separate window. 1847 Riverside, apartment 4B. The search took longer than it should have, The system was old, the records incomplete. But then something appeared that made her stomach drop. 3 years ago, a woman named Lisa Park had gone missing from apartment 4B. She'd been subletting from the previous tenant. Never found. Case went cold. The detective's notes were sparse. Tenant Marcus Huang claimed subletter left without notice. No evidence of foul play. No forwarding address. Family reported her missing after 2 weeks of no contact. Personal belongings left behind, including purse and phone. Never recovered. Jennifer, how long have you lived in that apartment? 2 years. We moved in right after we got married. Marcus said he got a great deal on it because the previous tenant had to leave suddenly for work. Why? Why are you asking me this? Monica's mind raced. The previous tenant was Marcus Huang, Jennifer's husband. He'd been living there when Lisa Park disappeared. Just gathering information. Is the woman still there? She's scratching at the wall now. Her fingernails are breaking off, but she keeps scratching. She's desperate. She wants me to look behind the tiles. She keeps mouthing the word evidence, over and over. Evidence, evidence, evidence. The sound of splintering wood exploded through the phone. Male voice, shouting with rage that transcended normal marital discord. Jennifer, open this door right now. That's Marcus, Jennifer whispered, her voice dropping to barely audible levels. He sounds different. Angrier than I've ever heard him. Like he's not even trying to pretend anymore. Officers are 2 minutes away, Jennifer. Stay in the bathroom. The woman is shaking her head. She's pointing at the window. She wants me to leave through the window. She's pressing her hands against the glass, and there are bloody handprints appearing. Monica quickly pulled up the building schematics on a third monitor. 4th floor apartment, bathroom window facing the alley. Jennifer, do not go through the window. You're on the 4th floor. There's a fire escape. I can see it. The woman is showing me how to open the window. It's painted shut, but she's showing me where to hit it. There's a weak spot in the paint seal near the bottom right corner. Another violent impact against the door. The sound of splintering wood was louder now. Marcus's voice had changed, becoming something primal and threatening. I know you've been talking to her. I know she's been showing you things. You couldn't leave it alone, could you? Just like she couldn't. Monica's mind raced, processing this new information. Marcus knew about the woman? Jennifer, what does Marcus mean? I don't know, unless... Oh God, he can't see her, but he knows she's here? He knows what she wants me to find? He's been watching me react to her for weeks. He's been testing me, asking me strange questions about the apartment, about whether I like the bathroom tiles. Officers Mitchell and Foster announced they were entering the building. Monica could hear sirens through Jennifer's phone, echoing in the confines of the alley outside. He's got something, Jennifer said, her voice tight with terror. I can see under the door. His shadow, and he's holding something long. A hammer. The woman is screaming now, but there's no sound. She's pointing at the wall frantically. She's trying to write something on the steamed mirror, but her fingers keep passing through. Jennifer, officers are coming up the stairs now. Wait, she's managing to write. The steam is forming letters. She's writing, "He killed me," behind the shower wall. My phone proves everything. Recording of him confessing. Oh God, she recorded him? The bathroom door exploded inward with a tremendous crash. Jennifer screamed. Monica heard Marcus's voice, closer now, filled with desperate fury. You couldn't leave it alone, could you? She couldn't leave it alone either. Always asking questions, always suspicious. I gave you everything. I changed for you. Units, expedite. Assault in progress, Monica shouted into the radio. abandoning protocol for urgency. Through the phone, she heard a struggle. Furniture crashing, Jennifer crying, Marcus shouting incoherently about the whispers and "she won't stop," showing you, and I can feel her watching through your eyes. Then, Officer Mitchell's voice, loud and authoritative. "Police!" Step away from her now. Hands where I can see them. The sounds of arrest followed. Miranda rights being read in Foster's clear voice, Marcus alternating between sobbing and raging, Jennifer gasping for breath. And then something that made Monica's skin crawl. Jennifer's voice, steady now despite everything, talking to someone the officers clearly couldn't see. "I'll find it. I promise I'll find it. You can rest now. Thank you for warning me. Thank you for saving my life." An hour later, Monica received a call from Officer Foster. The officer's voice carried the weight of someone processing something outside their normal experience. "Dispatch, you need to know what we found. The husband, Marcus Huang, he broke down completely. Full confession. 3 years ago, he killed his girlfriend Lisa Park in that apartment. He was the previous tenant, the one who sublet to her. They'd been dating secretly. She found out he was embezzling from his company and threatened to report him. He strangled her in the bathroom." Monica documented every word, her fingers steady despite the chill running down her spine. How did Jennifer know? That's the thing that's got everyone spooked. She insists a woman only she could see told her. Gave us exact details about where to look. The husband says he started hearing whispers a few weeks ago, seeing his wife react to things that weren't there. He knew somehow Lisa was showing Jennifer the truth. Tonight, he snapped. He figured if Jennifer knew, it was only a matter of time. "Did you find the evidence? Maintenance is opening the wall now. Hold on." There was a pause. Voices in the background, the sound of tiles breaking. "Dispatch, they found it. Plastic bag sealed inside the wall, phone, wallet, and, Christ, there's a recorded video. She recorded him threatening her the night she died." Monica documented everything, but the official report would never include the supernatural elements. It would state that Jennifer had intuited the truth, perhaps noticed subtle signs in her husband's behavior, maybe unconsciously detected the smell of decomposition that had long since faded. But Monica knew better, and she wasn't the only one. She began her own investigation that night, staying after her shift ended, diving deep into the dispatch records. She searched for keywords: invisible, can't see, third person, ghost, presence. The results were staggering. Over the next few days, 3 more calls came in from the Riverside complex. 3 different apartments, 3 different families, all reporting seeing people who weren't there, people who seemed desperate to communicate something. Maria Sandoval in 7F called about an elderly man in her living room who kept pointing at the floor. When officers investigated, they found human remains beneath the floorboards. The elderly man's description matched a missing person from 1987. David Kim in 12C reported a child who appeared only to his 5-year-old daughter, a little boy who kept playing with toy cars and crying. Investigation revealed that a child had died in that apartment in 1974, ruled accidental death, but new evidence suggested neglect and abuse. Rachel Thompson in 9A saw a middle-aged woman who obsessively cleaned, scrubbing at spots only she could see. The woman would mouth poison over and over. Testing revealed arsenic in the kitchen walls, evidence of a murder-suicide from 1963 that had been misclassified as food poisoning. Monica started her own investigation file, separate from official records. The Riverside complex had been built in 1952 on the site of the old Riverside Sanitarium, which had burned down in 1949 with 37 patients still inside. The land had been cheap. The developers had built quickly. But Monica suspected the horror went deeper than just the fire. She pulled historical records from the city archives, spending her days off in the basement of the library, going through boxes of documents that hadn't been digitized. What she found painted a picture of systematic abuse and neglect at the sanitarium dating back to its opening in 1910. Patients had been subjected to experimental treatments, punitive procedures disguised as therapy, and conditions that would be considered torture by modern standards. The fire in 1949 might have been the final tragedy, but it was built on decades of suffering. And all that pain, all that trauma, had seeped into the very ground the Riverside complex was built on. Monica developed a theory. Trauma, especially repeated trauma in a confined space, left an imprint, like a recording in the fabric of reality itself. Most people couldn't perceive these imprints, but some could. Usually, it was people who were themselves experiencing trauma or high stress. The emotional frequency matched, like tuning forks resonating together. She pulled 5 years of 9/11 transcripts, not just from Riverside but from across the city. The pattern was there, hidden in the data. Dozens of calls about domestic disturbances where one party claimed there was a third person present that no one else could see. In 60% of those cases, a crime was later discovered, usually one that had been committed years earlier in the same location. But it wasn't random. There were clusters, patterns within patterns. Certain buildings, certain neighborhoods, certain types of locations had higher incidences. Old hospitals, former prisons, sites of historical tragedies. These places practically hummed with invisible third-person reports. She created a classification system, coding it as Type 7 emergencies, a designation that didn't officially exist, but that she began training other dispatchers to recognize. The signs were consistent. The caller insisting someone invisible was present. Descriptions of the invisible person showing signs of violence or trauma. The invisible person trying to communicate through gestures or environmental manipulation. Monica reached out to Dr. Patricia Morrison at the university, who had been studying parapsychological phenomena for decades. Dr. Morrison was initially skeptical, but agreed to review Monica's data. After 3 days of analysis, she called Monica with excitement in her voice. "This is unprecedented. You've documented a phenomenon that we've theorized about but never been able to prove. These aren't hallucinations. They're too consistent, too specific, too often validated by subsequent discoveries. What you're calling Type 7 events are actually instances of what we call crisis apparitions, consciousness imprints that activate when someone receptive is present." Together, they developed a more sophisticated understanding of the phenomenon. The invisible third persons weren't exactly ghosts in the traditional sense. They were more like recordings with limited interactivity, consciousness fragments desperate to communicate unfinished business. They appeared most strongly to people whose emotional or psychological state resonated with their own trauma. 2 weeks after Jennifer's call, Monica received another Type 7 that would expand her understanding of the phenomenon dramatically. 911. What's your emergency? My name is Robert Torres. I'm in apartment 7C at Riverside Complex. There's a man in my apartment who my wife can see, but I can't. She's terrified of him, but I can't see anything. She says he's covered in blood and pointing a gun at me. Monica pulled up the apartment history as she dispatched units. Her database had grown comprehensive. In 1987, apartment 7C had been the scene of a murder-suicide that had been misclassified as a double suicide. The real killer had never been caught. The supposed killer, Thomas Morrison, had been found with a gun in his hand, but the angle of the wound suggested he couldn't have shot himself. Robert, I need you and your wife to leave the apartment immediately. We're trying, but Diana says the man is blocking the door. She says he's shaking his head, pointing at the closet. He looks desperate, like he needs us to understand something. The closet? She says he wants us to look in the closet first. Behind the panel in the back. He's showing her something, making a pulling motion. Monica could hear Robert's wife, Diana, in the background, her voice steady despite the fear. He's showing me. There's something hidden there. Evidence. He was protecting someone when he died. He wants us to find it before we leave. He keeps showing me the number 7 and pointing next door. Officers Mitchell and Foster, who had become Monica's go-to team for Type 7 calls after the Huang case, were already en route. They'd learned to take these calls seriously, to look beyond the seemingly impossible and focus on the very real crimes being revealed. "Robert, can you check the closet while staying on the line with me?" She heard movement, the sound of wood being pried away. Then Robert's gasp, "There's a gun here." Different from the one in the crime scene photos. And a wallet. The ID says Thomas Morrison. There's also a note sealed in plastic. Monica's fingers flew across her keyboard. What does the note say? It's from Morrison. It says, "Harold Klein killed them. I tried to stop him. He lives in 7D. If you're reading this, I'm probably dead too. Check his apartment under the refrigerator. He keeps trophies." Apartment 7D was now 7F. The building had been renumbered in 1995. Currently occupied by an elderly man named Harold Klein, the same man who had lived there in 1987. Units, we need to check apartment 7F as well. Possible connection to cold case. What they found in Harold Klein's apartment would crack open not just the 37-year-old triple murder case, but reveal a serial killer who had operated undetected for decades. Klein, suffering from dementia, confessed almost immediately when confronted with the evidence. He'd killed 6 people over 40 years, including Thomas Morrison, who had discovered his crimes and tried to stop him. The ghost, Morrison, visible only to Diana Torres, had finally found someone who could see him, someone who could help reveal the truth. As the evidence was catalogued and Klein was arrested, Diana reported that Morrison's appearance changed. The blood faded. The desperation left his face. He smiled, nodded, and simply disappeared. But Diana's ability to see Morrison didn't fade. If anything, it grew stronger. "I can see others now," she told Monica during the follow-up interview. "Not as clearly as Morrison, but they're there. In the complex, on the streets, sometimes in stores or restaurants. They're everywhere, aren't they? The invisible ones. They've always been there." Diana wasn't alone. Jennifer Huang reported similar experiences. So did Maria Sandoval and several others who had encountered invisible third persons. It was as if once the ability was activated, it couldn't be turned off. Monica recognized the implications immediately. These people were becoming what she termed sensitives, individuals with persistent ability to perceive invisible third persons. If she could organize them, create a network, they could solve cold cases across the city. She started small, gathering the sensitives for weekly meetings in the community room at the Riverside complex. The building's management, grateful for the resolution of so many historical crimes and the resulting improvement in the building's reputation, provided the space for free. The first meeting had 7 attendees: Jennifer Huang, Diana Torres, Maria Sandoval, David Kim's daughter, accompanied by her father, Rachel Thompson, and 2 new sensitives who had recently had Type 7 experiences. Monica facilitated, while Dr. Morrison observed and took notes. "I know this is strange," Monica began. "I know most of you never asked for this ability, but you have it now, and we need to understand it, control it, and maybe even use it to help others." Jennifer spoke first. "The woman, Lisa, she saved my life. If I can help someone else the way she helped me, I want to do that. Diana nodded. Morrison was trapped for 37 years, trying to tell the truth about his death. How many others are out there waiting for someone who can see them? Dr. Morrison presented her research on consciousness imprints and crisis apparitions. She taught them meditation techniques to filter the input, to avoid being overwhelmed. She explained that their sensitivity was likely a natural human ability that had been suppressed by modern life, but reactivated by trauma. Think of it like a radio, she explained. Most people are tuned to one station, physical reality, but trauma can knock your dial loose, and suddenly you're picking up other frequencies. The invisible third persons are broadcasting on these other frequencies, and you've become receivers. The group began meeting twice a week, then 3 times. They practiced together, learned to control their sensitivity, to turn the volume up or down as needed. They developed a buddy system for particularly intense experiences, and they started actively seeking out invisible third persons. Monica coordinated with the police department's cold case unit. She would send sensitives to locations where unsolved crimes had occurred, accompanied by officers for safety and credibility. The success rate was remarkable. In an abandoned warehouse on the south side, Jennifer saw a group of teenagers who had died in what was ruled a gang conflict, but turned out to be a covered-up police shooting from the 1970s. At an old hotel downtown, Diana found evidence of a human trafficking ring from the 1990s, the victims' spirits still trying to name their killers. In a suburban home, Maria helped a family understand that their haunted house was trying to tell them about a child who had been buried in the basement decades before they moved in. 6 months after the formation of what was now officially called the Sensitivity Registry, Monica was training a new dispatcher, David Kim, no relation to the David Kim from the Riverside complex. On the night shift, when the most complex Type 7 call of her career came in at 11:17 p.m., David was sharp, observant, and most importantly, open-minded about Type 7 calls. He joined the dispatch team specifically because he'd heard about Monica's work and wanted to be part of it. 911, what's your emergency? The voice was elderly, male, confused but articulate. This is Stanley Roberts in apartment 12A at Riverside Complex. I need help. My apartment is full of people, but they're not really here. Does that make sense? Monica immediately took over the call, gesturing for David to listen in and observe. This was a teaching moment, but also something more. The quantity of invisible third persons was unprecedented. Mr. Roberts, this is dispatcher Monica Reeves. Can you describe these people? There are so many, maybe 15, 20, all different ages, all different eras by their clothing. They're all talking at once, pointing at different things. Some are pointing up, some down, some at the walls. They seem desperate to tell me something, but I can't understand them all. It's like being in a crowded room where everyone is shouting, but there's no sound. Monica pulled up Stanley's information. 78 years old, widower, lived alone. Had been in apartment 12A for 6 months. No history of mental illness, though his age raised concerns about potential dementia. But his voice was clear, his speech patterns normal. This wasn't confusion. This was observation. Mr. Roberts, I'm sending officers to check on you. Can you describe any of these people specifically? There's a young woman in a hospital gown. 1940s style, I think. I remember them from when I was young. She keeps pointing at the ceiling, tracing something with her finger. A pattern. A man in a suit from maybe the 1950s. He's gesturing at the floor, stamping his foot on one particular spot. A teenage boy who looks modern, maybe from the last decade. He's by the window, pressing his hands against the glass like he's trying to break through. They all look traumatized, desperate. Some have visible injuries, burns, mainly burns. Monica's fingers flew across her keyboard. Apartment 12. A had been renovated multiple times, but it was part of the original building structure. More importantly, it was directly below what had once served as the sanitarium's records room. If the fire had started there... Mr. Roberts, have you noticed anything unusual about your apartment recently? Any construction, water damage, anything that might have disturbed the space? Yes, actually. There was a water leak from upstairs last week. The management company had to tear out part of my ceiling to fix it. That's when these people started appearing. First just one or two, but more every day. Tonight it's like a crowd. David pointed at his screen, showing Monica what he'd found in the city's construction permits database. The renovation had likely disturbed something in the infrastructure of the building. Old papers had been found in the ceiling during the repair, partial records from the sanitarium that had somehow survived the fire, protected by a metal filing cabinet that had fallen through the floor during the blaze. Officers Mitchell and Foster arrived within minutes. They'd become experts at handling Type 7 calls with a combination of skepticism and open-mindedness that served them well. Mitchell, in particular, had developed what Monica suspected was his own sensitivity, though he never admitted it directly. "Dispatch," Mitchell radioed, his voice carrying an undertone of awe. "We're with Mr. Roberts." He's lucid, oriented, but clearly experiencing something. He keeps looking around the apartment at specific spots, reacting to things we can't see, and I'm getting a feeling, like the air is heavy, charged. "Ask him if the people are trying to show him something specific," Monica instructed. There was a pause, muffled conversation, then Mitchell's voice. "He says they're all pointing at different spots, but there's a pattern. They seem to be indicating the walls, ceiling, and floor in a specific sequence. He's numbering them for us." Monica had an idea. "Mr. Roberts, through Officer Mitchell, can you number the spots they're pointing at? Just call them out in order. 1, 2, 3, and so on. We'll map them." Through the radio, she heard Stanley's voice calling out numbers and locations. David was already creating a 3D model on his screen, plotting each point. After 17 points, a pattern emerged. They formed a rough outline of the building's original architecture, specifically highlighting areas where the structure had been modified. But more than that, they seemed to indicate specific locations within the old structure. "Monica," David said quietly, his voice shaking slightly, "if these are all victims from the sanitarium fire, they might be showing him where they were when they died, where their bodies were never properly recovered. The 1949 fire had been devastating. The official report stated that all bodies had been recovered, but Monica had learned to distrust official reports when it came to the Riverside complex. If the fire had caused structural collapses, if some victims had been trapped in spaces that were sealed off during the rushed reconstruction." "Mr. Roberts," Monica said through Mitchell, "ask them if they died in the fire." There was a long pause. Then Mitchell's voice, professionally controlled but with emotion underneath. "He says they're all nodding. And now they're showing him something else. They're acting out their final moments. Some are trying to escape, running into walls that were once doors. Others are huddled together, holding each other. One is writing something in the air, over and over. Can he read what they're writing? He says, Crawford did this. Crawford locked us in." Dr. James Crawford had been the sanitarium's chief administrator. He'd been hailed as a hero for trying to save patients, one of the few staff members who died in the fire. But what if that wasn't the truth? Monica made a decision. "Mitchell, we need the full registry on this. I'm calling in all available sensitives." Within an hour, 12 members of the registry had assembled at the Riverside complex. Jennifer Huang, Diana Torres, Maria Sandoval, and others who had developed their abilities over months of practice. Together with Stanley Roberts, they formed a circle in his apartment, each one extending their sensitivity to its maximum range. What they experienced together was unprecedented. The sensitives later described it as a kind of shared vision, a collective memory rising from the building itself. They saw the night of the fire not from one perspective, but from dozens. All the trapped patients, all the victims whose voices had been silenced for 75 years. And they saw the truth. Dr. Crawford hadn't died trying to save patients. He had deliberately locked certain wards to prevent patients from escaping, patients who knew about his embezzlement, his abuse, his using vulnerable patients for unauthorized medical experiments. The fire had been his way to destroy evidence, but it had gotten out of control. He'd tried to flee but been caught in his own trap, dying in the administrative wing along with his victims. The sensitives saw more than just the fire. They saw years of abuse, of patients being punished for speaking out, of families being told their loved ones had died of natural causes when they'd been murdered. The invisible third persons weren't just showing them how they died. They were showing them how they had lived and suffered. Jennifer Huang, tears streaming down her face, suddenly spoke in a voice that wasn't quite her own. "Records room." Under the floor, metal box. Crawford hid it there before the fire. Evidence of everything. The search took 3 hours. The metal box was exactly where the spirits had indicated, sealed beneath floorboards that had been laid during the 1952 reconstruction. Inside were patient records, financial documents, and Crawford's own journal detailing his crimes. There were also photographs, evidence of abuse that would have been damning even in the 1940s. As the box was opened and the evidence brought to light, something extraordinary happened. Stanley Roberts reported that the invisible third persons were changing. Their desperate energy was calming. Some were embracing each other. Others were simply fading, peacefully, as if a weight had been lifted. "They're not disappearing," Stanley said, his voice full of wonder. "They're ascending? Moving on? I don't have the words for it, but they're finally free." The discovery led to a massive investigation. The city council voted to create a memorial for all victims of the Riverside Sanitarium, not just those who died in the fire, but all who had suffered there. Families who had always suspected something was wrong finally had answers. But more importantly for Monica's work, the collective Type 7 event had proven something crucial. Sensitives working together could access deeper levels of information than any individual could alone. They could share visions, corroborate experiences, and support each other through intense revelations. The Riverside Complex Collective event changed everything. News of it spread through emergency response communities nationwide. Monica found herself fielding calls from dispatch centers across the country, all reporting similar phenomena. Type 7 events weren't unique to her city. They were happening everywhere, but most dispatchers hadn't known how to recognize or categorize them. 3 months after the collective event, Monica was reviewing the expanding database of Type 7 calls when she noticed something odd. A cluster of recent calls didn't fit the pattern. The invisible third persons being reported weren't connected to historical tragedies or cold cases. They were appearing randomly, desperately trying to communicate, but disappearing before any message could be understood. She was puzzling over this when a call came in that would revolutionize her understanding of the phenomenon. 911, what's your emergency? Please help. The caller was a middle-aged woman, panic in her voice. I'm at Mercy General Hospital. My son just went into surgery and I'm seeing him in the waiting room, but he's also in surgery. I don't understand. He's trying to tell me something. Monica's training kicked in. Ma'am, what's your name? Patricia Harrison. My son is Luke Harrison. He's a paramedic. He was shot on duty 3 days ago. He's in surgery now, but I can see him standing right here trying to talk to me. He looks injured. There's blood on his chest, but he's trying to communicate something. This was different. This wasn't a ghost or a consciousness imprint from the past. Luke Harrison was alive, though critically injured. Patricia, what is Luke trying to tell you? He's pointing at his partner's photo on the wall, the memorial wall. No, wait, Derek isn't dead. Derek was with him when he was shot. Oh God, he's trying to tell me Derek is still alive. But the police said Derek was killed. Monica immediately pulled up the incident report. 3 days ago, paramedics Luke Harrison and Derek Patterson had responded to a call in the industrial district. They'd been ambushed, apparently by drug dealers who mistook their ambulance for a police vehicle. Derek Patterson was reported killed at the scene. Luke Harrison, critically injured and in a coma until this morning's emergency surgery. But if Luke was somehow projecting himself to his mother, and if he was saying Derek was alive, Patricia, can Luke show you where Derek is? He's drawing something in the air. Numbers 3-7-4, and he's making a gesture like a building, multiple floors. Monica's blood ran cold. That was the same address pattern that had appeared in the sanitarium case. Units to 374 Industrial Avenue. Possible victim alive at scene. Monica dispatched immediately. What they found would change everything. Derek Patterson was alive, barely, in a concealed basement of the abandoned warehouse at 374 Industrial Avenue. The crime scene investigators had missed him because the attackers had hidden him, planning to come back and dispose of the body. But Derek was unconscious, not dead. Luke Harrison survived his surgery. When he woke up, he had no memory of appearing to his mother, but he had somehow known Derek was alive. He described it as a desperate need that pushed his consciousness out of his body while he was under anesthesia. Dr. Morrison was called in to study this new phenomenon. Her conclusion was groundbreaking. Near-death experiences and extreme trauma can cause consciousness to separate from the physical body temporarily. Luke's desperate need to save his partner allowed him to project his consciousness to someone receptive, his mother. This isn't about dead spirits or past trauma. This is about living consciousness in crisis. Monica immediately recognized the implications. Some of the Type 7 calls they'd been receiving might not be about the dead at all. They might be living people in extreme distress, projecting their consciousness as a cry for help. She developed new protocols for what she called active Type 7s, cases where the invisible third person might be a living person in distress. The protocols included checking for recent missing persons or unsolved crimes, mapping the locations of sightings to find a center point, looking for patterns in who could see the projection, family members, people with emotional connections, other sensitives, taking the projected person's attempts at communication seriously and literally. Within a month, 3 more active Type 7 cases were successfully resolved. An 8-year-old girl who had been kidnapped projected herself to her teacher, showing exact landmarks that led to her rescue. An elderly man who had fallen in his apartment and couldn't reach his phone projected to his neighbor, who he barely knew but who happened to be a latent sensitive. A woman trapped in a collapsed parking garage after an earthquake projected to multiple sensitives across the city, creating a triangulation effect that located her precisely. But the most significant discovery came when Monica noticed that people who had experienced active Type 7 projections retained increased sensitivity afterward. Luke Harrison, recovered from his injuries, found he could sense when other people were projecting. He became invaluable to the registry, able to detect and locate active projections with unprecedented accuracy. The active Type 7 phenomenon suggested something profound. Human consciousness wasn't confined to the physical body. In extreme circumstances, it could separate, travel, and communicate across distances. This wasn't supernatural. It was a natural ability that modern humans had forgotten how to use. 1 year after the first Type 7 call, Monica found herself at the center of a revolution in emergency response. The sensitivity registry had grown to over 500 members in her city alone, with chapters forming in major cities across the country. The Type 7 protocol had been officially adopted by the Department of Emergency Services, though the more esoteric aspects were kept in separate, classified documentation. But growth brought challenges. Not all sensitives could handle the constant input. Some became overwhelmed, unable to filter out the invisible third persons who seemed to be everywhere once you could see them. Others became obsessed, spending all their time seeking out spirits and projections, neglecting their own lives. The crisis came to a head when Monica received a call at 3:22 a.m. on a cold December night. 911, what's your emergency? This is Dr. Nathan Cross at Riverside Psychiatric. We have a situation. One of our patients, Rebecca Thompson, is experiencing what appears to be a Type 7 overload. Monica knew Rebecca. She was one of the strongest sensitives in the registry, able to perceive invisible third persons with remarkable clarity. But that strength had become a weakness. What's her status, Dr. Cross? She's catatonic, but the monitors show intense brain activity. She's experiencing something, but we can't reach her. And, this is going to sound strange, but other sensitive individuals in the facility are reporting that she's projecting. Not her own distress, but others. She's become some kind of relay station, broadcasting every Type 7 presence in the city. Monica immediately understood the implications. If Rebecca was receiving and retransmitting every distress signal in the city, she could burn out her neural pathways. They'd seen it happen in laboratory tests with mice exposed to high levels of electromagnetic fields. The nervous system could only handle so much input before it started to break down. I'm sending our specialist team, Monica said, alerting the registry's emergency response unit. The team included Luke Harrison, whose unique experience made him invaluable. Dr. Morrison, who had developed techniques for managing sensitivity, and surprisingly, Stanley Roberts, the elderly man who'd seen the sanitarium victims. Despite his age, Stanley had become one of the most skilled registry members at filtering and managing multiple projections. When they arrived at the psychiatric facility, they found Rebecca in the secure wing, surrounded by monitoring equipment. Her eyes were open but unseeing, and her body was rigid with tension. The EEG readings were unlike anything the medical staff had seen, brainwaves oscillating at frequencies that should have been impossible. Dr. Morrison scanned the readings with growing concern. Her brain is processing information at impossible rates. It's like she's experiencing hundreds of consciousnesses simultaneously. Every invisible third person, every projection, every trauma imprint in the city is flowing through her. Stanley approached Rebecca slowly. At 91, he moved carefully, but his sensitivity was unmatched. He'd learned not just to see the invisible third persons, but to understand them, to filter their input without being overwhelmed. He placed his weathered hand gently on Rebecca's. "I can feel them," he said, his voice strained. "All of them. Every person in distress within, God, it must be a 50-mile radius. She's trying to help them all. She can't turn it off." "Can you filter it?" Dr. Morrison asked. "I can try." What happened next would be studied for years. Stanley somehow created what he later described as a psychic firewall around Rebecca, using his own consciousness to shield her from the incoming signals. But he couldn't maintain it alone. The input was too intense, like trying to hold back a flood with his bare hands. Luke joined him, adding his unique ability to distinguish between living projections and trauma imprints. Then Dr. Morrison, using the meditation techniques she'd developed. One by one, every sensitive in the building linked together. creating a network of consciousness that distributed the load Rebecca had been carrying alone. Monica coordinated from the command center, watching as reports came in from across the city. The network wasn't just shielding Rebecca. It was actually processing the distress signals, sending help where needed. It was like a psychic emergency response system, infinitely faster and more precise than traditional methods. In 2 hours, they prevented 3 suicides, located 5 missing persons, and identified a gas leak that could have killed dozens. The network had become something greater than the sum of its parts, a collective consciousness dedicated to protecting and serving the city. When Rebecca finally came out of her catatonic state, she was exhausted but coherent. She described what she'd experienced. "I could feel everyone who was hurt, scared, dying. I couldn't not help them, but it was too much. I was drowning in their pain." She looked at Stanley and the others with tears in her eyes. "Until you came. You shared the load. We became something bigger than ourselves." This incident led to the development of network protocols, ways for sensitives to link together during major emergencies, distributing the psychic load to prevent overload in any individual. It required trust, training, and perfect synchronization, but when it worked, it was miraculous. The first major test came during the Riverside earthquake, a 6.7 magnitude quake that struck 6 months later. The city's sensitives immediately networked, locating trapped survivors with unprecedented accuracy. They could sense not just where people were, but their condition, their injuries, how long they could survive. The death toll was a fraction of what it would have been without the Type 7 network. National attention followed. Media coverage was mixed. Some hailed it as the next step in human evolution. Others dismissed it as mass hysteria despite the documented results. Religious groups were divided, with some seeing it as divine gift and others as dangerous occultism. But for Monica and the registry, the philosophical debates were secondary to the practical results. They were saving lives, solving crimes, and helping spirits find peace. Whatever the mechanism, whatever the implications, the Type 7 protocol worked. 2 years after the first Type 7 call, Monica found herself on a plane to Tokyo, invited by the Japanese government to help establish their own version of the Type 7 protocol. What she discovered there would fundamentally change her understanding of the phenomenon. The Japanese had been dealing with similar events for centuries, but they had a completely different framework for understanding them. Where Americans saw invisible third persons as anomalies to be investigated, the Japanese saw them as a natural part of existence, to be respected and integrated. Monica's liaison was Dr. Akiko Yamamoto, a psychiatrist who specialized in what she called boundary experiences, moments when the veil between the physical and spiritual worlds became thin. In Japan, we have always known that the dead remain connected to the living, Dr. Yamamoto explained as they visited a site in Tokyo where multiple Type 7 events had been reported. "We have rituals, festivals, ways of acknowledging and honoring these presences. What you call sensitives, we call mediums, and they have been part of our society for thousands of years." The building they were investigating was a modern office complex built on the site of a World War II bombing. Unlike the chaotic, desperate, invisible third persons Monica was used to, the presences here were calm, almost organized. "They appear every year on the anniversary," Dr. Yamamoto explained. "They don't want justice or revelation. They simply want to be remembered. Our sensitives come here to acknowledge them, to let them know they are not forgotten." Monica observed as a group of Japanese sensitives performed what looked like a ceremony, but was actually a highly sophisticated form of consciousness networking. They didn't just perceive the invisible third persons, They communicated with them, creating a dialogue between the living and the dead. One of the sensitives, an elderly woman named Keiko Tanaka, explained through a translator, "The Western approach is to solve the mystery, to help the spirit move on. But not all spirits want to move on. Some choose to remain, to watch over places and people they love. Our role is not to dismiss them, but to coexist with them." This perspective revolutionized Monica's approach. Back home, she'd been focused on resolution, solving crimes, revealing truth, helping spirits find peace. But what if some invisible third persons weren't problems to be solved, but presences to be acknowledged? She spent 3 weeks in Japan, learning their techniques. The Japanese sensitives had developed methods for distinguishing between distressed spirits needing help and guardian spirits choosing to actually perceiving it in real time. Then I learned to direct it, to send my consciousness to specific locations. He demonstrated, closing his eyes and describing in perfect detail what was happening in a sealed room 3 floors away, where volunteers were performing random actions. The accuracy was undeniable. "This isn't unique to me," Luke continued. "We've identified 47 individuals worldwide who have developed this ability. All of them are people who experienced intense Type 7 events and survived. It's as if the trauma unlocked something that was always there." Dr. Morrison took the stage to explain the implications. Human consciousness is not confined to the brain. It's a field phenomenon that extends beyond the physical body. Under normal circumstances, this field is tightly bound to our physical form. But trauma, meditation, near-death experiences, these can loosen that binding. She showed brain scans of conscious evolvers, as they'd been termed. During projection, their brains showed a unique pattern: decreased activity in the regions associated with physical sensation, and increased activity in areas associated with abstract thought and memory. "We're not becoming psychic," Dr. Morrison emphasized. "We're remembering an ability that all humans possess but have forgotten how to use." The invisible third persons were our teachers, showing us what consciousness can do when freed from physical constraints. The conference erupted in discussion. The implications were staggering. If human consciousness could exist and operate independently of the physical body, what did that mean for medical definitions of death? Legal concepts of presence and witness testimony, religious and philosophical understanding of the soul, the future evolution of the human species. But while the theorists debated, practitioners like Monica focused on immediate applications. The advanced Type 7 protocol she presented included training programs for developing conscious projection in emergency responders, integration of projection abilities into search and rescue operations, legal frameworks for projection-based testimony, ethical guidelines for consciousness separation, medical protocols for managing projection-related neurological stress. Not everyone was ready for these advances. Several countries banned Type 7 research, viewing it as dangerous pseudoscience or religious heresy. Others embraced it perhaps too enthusiastically, with inadequately trained individuals attempting projection and suffering psychological damage. Monica found herself at the center of a global transformation. The simple protocol she'd developed for handling calls about invisible third persons had become the foundation for humanity's next evolutionary step. Not everyone welcomed the Type 7 revelations. As the 4th anniversary of Jennifer Huang's call approached, Monica faced increasing opposition from various quarters. The Scientific Materialist Coalition, led by Dr. Richard Steinberg, challenged every aspect of the Type 7 protocol. They claimed that all the successes could be explained by coincidence, cold reading, and confirmation bias. They demanded double-blind studies, which were ethically impossible when dealing with life and death emergencies. Ms. Reeves is peddling dangerous pseudoscience, Dr. Steinberg declared on national television. She's taking advantage of traumatized people, convincing them they have supernatural powers. This is a mental health crisis disguised as evolution. Religious opposition came from multiple directions. Some conservative groups saw Type 7 abilities as demonic, evidence of possession or witchcraft. They organized protests outside registry offices, claiming the organization was opening doorways to hell. Conversely, other religious groups embraced Type 7 too enthusiastically, declaring sensitives to be prophets or angels. Several cults formed around particularly powerful sensitives, leading to exploitation and abuse. The most serious opposition came from within the government. Senator Patricia Hoffman, who had been skeptical during Monica's congressional testimony, now led a committee investigating what she called the Type 7 threat to national security. If people can project their consciousness anywhere, Senator Hoffman argued, what's to stop foreign agents from spying on classified facilities? What's to stop criminals from conducting surveillance undetected? We're talking about the complete breakdown of privacy and security. Monica was called to testify again, this time in a closed session with intelligence officials present. Senator, consciousness projection has limitations, Monica explained. It requires either extreme trauma or extensive training. The projector must have some connection to the location or person they're trying to reach. And most importantly, sensitives can detect when someone is projecting into their space. She demonstrated this by having Luke Harrison project into the secure hearing room while standing outside. Every sensitive in the room, including 2 CIA agents who had been secretly developing their abilities, immediately detected his presence. Rather than a threat, Monica argued, Type 7 abilities are defense. They allow us to detect intrusions that would be invisible to conventional security. This led to the development of psychic security protocols. Government facilities began employing sensitives as a new form of security, able to detect not just conscious projections but the residual presence of anyone who had been in a space. But the opposition wasn't just philosophical or political. Monica began receiving death threats. Someone was targeting registry members, not with violence but with psychological attacks. Sensitives reported being bombarded with horrific projections, images of torture, death, suffering beyond anything they'd experienced from genuine, invisible third persons. The attacks were coordinated, sophisticated, and unlike anything the registry had encountered. Someone had weaponized Type 7 abilities. The investigation led to a shocking discovery. Dr. Crawford, the abusive administrator of the Riverside Sanitarium who had died in the fire, had a grandson, James Crawford III. James had spent years studying his grandfather's research, the experiments conducted on patients, the techniques for manipulating consciousness. James had developed a dark version of the Type 7 protocol. Where Monica's work focused on helping and healing, James had created methods for forcing traumatic projections onto sensitives, trapping consciousness in loops of suffering, creating artificial invisible third persons programmed with false information, blocking sensitives' abilities through psychic interference. He led a group calling itself the Crawford Institute, dedicated to proving that Type 7 abilities were dangerous and should be eliminated, by demonstrating just how dangerous they could be. The confrontation came at the Riverside complex, where it had all begun. James and his followers attempted to create what they called a psychic bomb, a massive traumatic projection that would affect every sensitive in the city simultaneously, driving them insane and discrediting the entire Type 7 movement. But they had underestimated the registry's growth and organization. Led by Monica, over 1,000 sensitives networked together, creating a shield of consciousness that absorbed and dissipated the attack. The Crawford Institute's members, overwhelmed by their own weapon turned back on them, were left catatonic. James Crawford III was arrested and eventually recovered, though his sensitivity was permanently damaged. During his interrogation, he revealed something disturbing. He wasn't the only one developing weaponized Type 7 techniques. Governments, criminal organizations, and extremist groups worldwide were all exploring the dark potential of consciousness projection. This led to the establishment of the Global Type 7 Ethics Committee, with Monica as its first director. Their mandate was to develop international laws and treaties governing the use of consciousness projection, similar to those governing nuclear or biological weapons. The Type 7 Geneva Convention, signed by 43 nations, established prohibitions on forced consciousness, projection, rights of sensitives to mental sovereignty, regulations on consciousness-based surveillance, penalties for psychic assault, protocols for defensive consciousness techniques. But Monica knew that laws alone wouldn't be enough. The cat was out of the bag. Humanity had rediscovered its psychic potential, and like any powerful ability, it could be used for good or evil. 5 years after Jennifer Huang's first call, the world had fundamentally changed. Type 7 awareness had become part of everyday life, as normal as cell phones or the internet. Children were tested for sensitivity in school. Businesses employed sensitives for security and communication. Medical facilities used consciousness projection for diagnosis and treatment. Monica, now director of the Global Type 7 Initiative, looked out from her office at the top of the new registry headquarters. The building had been specifically designed for sensitive operations: electromagnetic shielding, meditation spaces, projection chambers, and even what they called spirit-friendly areas where invisible third persons could exist comfortably. The intercom buzzed. "Director Reeves, your 3 o'clock appointment is here." Jennifer Huang entered, but she was no longer the terrified woman who had called 911 5 years ago. She had become one of the most powerful sensitives in the registry, able to perceive and communicate with invisible third persons across vast distances. She now ran the Riverside Complex Memorial Center, which had become a global pilgrimage site for sensitives. "Monica, we need to talk about the evolution acceleration." The evolution acceleration was a phenomenon they'd begun noticing 6 months ago. The number of people developing Type 7 sensitivity was increasing exponentially. Not just people who had experienced trauma, but ordinary individuals suddenly able to perceive invisible third persons or project their consciousness. "The latest numbers?" Monica asked. 3 million confirmed sensitives worldwide, up from 500,000 last year. At this rate, within a decade, the majority of humanity will have some level of Type 7 ability. They had theorized this might happen. As more people became aware of Type 7 abilities, as the collective human consciousness accepted these capabilities as real, the barriers preventing their expression weakened. It was as if humanity was remembering a forgotten language, and once critical mass was reached, everyone would suddenly be fluent. "We're not ready," Monica said. "The infrastructure, the training programs, the support systems, they're all designed for sensitives being a small minority." "That's why I'm here," Jennifer said. "I have a proposal. Rather than trying to control or contain the evolution acceleration, we embrace it. We make Type 7 training part of standard education. We redesign cities to accommodate consciousness projection. We create a society where the living and the dead, the physical and the projected, coexist naturally." It was ambitious, even radical. But Monica had learned that the Type 7 phenomenon always pushed humanity toward growth, toward evolution, toward a broader understanding of what it meant to be conscious. They spent hours planning, designing what they called the Consciousness Integration Protocol. It would require cooperation on a global scale. fundamental changes to education, law, architecture, and social structures. But the alternative, a world where most people had uncontrolled psychic abilities, was far more dangerous. As the sun set over the city, Monica stood at her window, extending her sensitivity to its full range. She could perceive the entire city's consciousness network, millions of minds linked by invisible threads of awareness. She could sense the invisible third persons, no longer hidden but integrated into the fabric of urban life. She could feel the projections of sensitives checking on loved ones, conducting security sweeps, exploring the boundaries of their abilities. Her phone rang. It was dispatch. Her old workplace still called her for the most complex Type 7 cases. Director Reeves, we have a situation. Multiple callers reporting the same invisible third person appearing simultaneously across the entire city. But this one is different. They're all saying the person is glowing, and when they speak, everyone can hear them, sensitive or not. Monica felt a chill. They had theorized about this, the next stage of evolution, where consciousness projection became so powerful it could affect physical reality, visible and audible to everyone, regardless of sensitivity. I'm on my way. As she rushed to the dispatch center, Monica reflected on how far they'd come. 5 years ago, invisible third persons were terrifying anomalies. Now they were teachers, guides, showing humanity what it was capable of becoming. Whatever this new development was, Monica knew it was just the next step in humanity's consciousness evolution. The invisible was becoming visible. The impossible was becoming normal. And she would be there to help humanity navigate this transformation, one emergency call at a time.